Chapter 39. Looking at the woman who had just walked out of the stone house, she immediately felt that something was wrong. She looked at the second prince, and the expression on her face changed drastically. She stood there in a daze, and her entire body trembled like a sieve. She almost fell to the ground. The snake species' natural submission to the dragon clan was involuntarily revealed. "Wife?" A weak voice sounded from inside the stone house. He seemed to have noticed the abnormality and hurriedly asked, "What happened to you?" Nothing. Husband, you must not come out." The woman's voice was a bit shrill and even had a hissing sound. However, in the midst of the woman's voice, there was a slightly dragging sound of footsteps. A man in strange clothes walked out of the stone house. This man had a head full of white hair and two big and lifeless eyes. His hands were stretched out in front of him, groping left and right. Obviously, he was blind. When the man touched the snake demon's trembling body, he said in surprise, "Wife, why are you so cold? Quickly put on these clothes." As he spoke, the blind man hurriedly took off his clothes and touched the woman, wanting to help her put on her clothes. "No need, husband." Facing the second prince of the Dragon Palace, the woman could not restrain her body from trembling. However, she still hurriedly shouted, "The wind is strong here, you quickly put on your clothes." "Humph." The second prince of the Dragon Palace snorted and looked at the woman and the demon with extreme disgust. The dragon breath from his mouth and nose blew past, creating a fierce wind that blew away the clothes in the man's hands. "Such a strong wind!" the old man said and hurriedly pulled the woman's arm. "Wife, quickly come back to hide from the wind." The snake demon did not dare to move. She hurriedly pushed the man and said, "Husband, don't worry about me, quickly go back, damn thing, you actually dare to conspire with a human." The shrimp soldiers and crab soldiers in the distance had already approached. When Ma Yingfeng saw this, he unconsciously thought of Xiaohua's slander in the arena and his heart burned with anger. He waved the trident in his hand and stabbed it towards the trembling snake spirit woman. The woman was shocked and wanted to dodge. However, when she saw the man still holding her arm, she gritted her teeth and tilted her body to block the man. Her body met the trident head-on. "Are you crazy?" At this moment, a lazy voice came from the place where the second prince of Dragon Palace was looking. "They are a loving couple. I envy them. Why do you want to break them apart? If you break them up, then I won't even have a neighbor." Following this voice, a huge black shadow rushed out from that place and blocked the three-pronged fork. When Ma Yingfeng saw that the three-pronged fork had wings that seemed to be cast from copper and iron, he couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. "Fellow Immortal, where did you come from?" The second prince of Dragon Palace was not surprised. He looked at the origin of the wings with interest and asked, "When will we arrive at Yuling Bay? Why didn't I know that there was a powerful demon race expert on this cliff? This old man came from where he came from, and in the future, I will return to the same place. I just stayed in Yuling Bay for a few years. I don't need to disturb so many fellow immortals, right?" As he spoke, a demon race of more than 30 meters flew out from the foot of the mountain. This demon race was now in human form. On his head, which was several feet in size, there was a pair of bright eyes flashing with a sharp gaze. Two long eyebrows were slanted into his sideburns like sharp swords. His slightly bulging mouth and nose revealed faint red lips and white teeth. The demon's wings were surging with demon aura, and a pair of naked arms with bulging muscles could be vaguely seen amidst the demon aura. What was blocking the sharp weapons was the shadow of one of the demon's wings. "I'm Ao Jing, the second prince of North Sea Dragon Palace." The second prince pondered for a moment, and cupped his hands. "How should I address you, fellow immortal?" "Oh, it's the second prince." The demon race suddenly realized and laughed. "I'm Feng Wu. As for where I come from, it's just an unknown place in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. It's not comparable to the North Sea Dragon Palace. Let's not talk about it. So it's fellow immortal Feng Wu." Ao Jing laughed. I wonder if I'm lucky enough to invite fellow Immortal to Yuling Palace for a chat? I'm not going! I'm not going! Feng Wu flapped his wings and said, If I wanted to go, I would have gone a few years ago. Since I'm not going, I can only disappoint the second prince. Fine. Since fellow Immortal doesn't like to be disturbed, I won't mention this matter. Facing Feng Wu, an unfamiliar demon, Ao Jing acutely sensed that this demon of the Phoenix bloodline was exceptionally powerful. He couldn't help but restrain his arrogance as he smiled and said, However, this king would like to ask you, did you sense a human cultivator who concealed himself and passed by here just now? Hee, second prince really overestimates my strength. Feng Wu laughed. How can I see a human race cultivator that even second prince can't catch up with? Humph, damn human race! At the mention of Xiaohua, an inexplicable anger appeared on Ao Jing's face. He turned his head to look at the snake spirit and the old man in the stone house and said sternly, Evil creature, what's the matter with you? If you don't explain clearly, I'll take your life right now. Second prince, please spare my life. The snake spirit almost fell to the ground and said anxiously, Su Lang is this lowly concubine's savior. This lowly concubine doesn't know how to repay him, so I want to accompany him for the rest of my life. Lowly concubine. You're really good at saying the word human race. Ao Jing laughed sinisterly. This man is just weak, how can he save you? Aren't you deceiving me? I'll let second prince know. The snake spirit didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, When Su Lang was young, this lowly concubine was chased by an enemy and turned into a small snake. It was winter at that time. This lowly concubine was frozen into a popsicle and was about to freeze to death. Su Lang just happened to come back from the academy and happened to meet this lowly concubine. He was careful and kind. When he saw that this lowly concubine was frozen by the winter snow, he hid this lowly concubine in his arms. After a night of warmth, this lowly concubine finally woke up. This lowly concubine didn't dare to stay in Su Lang's house for long and hurriedly flew underground to hibernate. When this lowly concubine recovered the next year, this lowly concubine went to find Su Lang to repay his kindness. However, when this lowly concubine found Su Lang, this lowly concubine found out that because this lowly concubine didn't know how to restrain the poison in her body when she was seriously injured, Su Lang was poisoned by this lowly concubine when he saved this lowly concubine. Although this lowly concubine was saved by the human race's physician, Su Lang was still blind. This lowly concubine felt that there was nothing this lowly concubine could do to repay him, so I pretended to be a wandering village woman and married into the Su family, pledging my life to you. When Su Lang grew old and no longer had anything to worry about at home, this lowly concubine brought Su Lang out to fulfill his long-cherished wish of traveling 10,000 li instead of reading 10,000 books. When I arrived at the Northern Sea, Su Lang was already old and couldn't walk anymore. Therefore, this lowly concubine built a house here and accompanied him on his last journey. Wife, what are you talking about? The man in the house was very puzzled when he heard the crooked demon language outside the house. However, he was also familiar with the woman's voice and couldn't help but ask in surprise, Who is outside? We've been here for so long, but we've never had any neighbors come to visit. Could it be that it's our neighbors? Ga. Sure, Jin Feng sneered and changed the demon language in the air into human language. He mocked, Wife, do you know what your wife is? She's just a snake spirit. Do you know where you live? This is a cliff that goes deep into the Northern Sea. In the past, there were many seabirds here, but now, not a single seabird can be seen. Do you know where these seabirds went? They were all swallowed by your snake spirit wife. Where did you get this neighborhood from? Hearing Ao Jing's words, the house was silent at first. In the end, that man cried out in shock. Wife, who is this person? Is what he said true? Aren't you an orphan of the Bai family? How did you become a snake spirit? How is this possible? Husband. A trace of sorrow appeared in the woman's previously emotionless eyes. This sorrow was especially obvious in the pitch-black snake eyes. Feng Wu frowned and glared at Shi Jinfeng with some displeasure. Shi Jinfeng's heart shrank as fear appeared in his heart. At this moment, he finally understood why his prince was so courteous to this demon with a phoenix body. It wasn't just because Feng Wu was powerful. My wife. Say something. I don't believe what this person said. That man pressed. Are you a human or a demon? The snake spirit woman hesitated for a moment and said, Husband, is it important whether this lowly concubine is a human or a demon? Unfortunately, that old man with the surname Su didn't answer. After a moment, the snake spirit woman said with some sorrow, Husband, do you still remember the story of the little snake that this concubine often told you? Of course I remember. That man's voice trembled. You often told this story to me. I thought you were comforting me. Could it be? The man's voice was somewhat fearful. Wife was also replaced with you. The woman straightened her waist with difficulty, and turned her head to look sadly at the stone house. She had accompanied this man for dozens of years. Although she was a demon, she understood the man's thoughts from the change in his tone. Damn it, this is ridiculous. Ao Jing couldn't help but ridicule. You've shared a bed for dozens of years and you don't even know what your wife is. Have you spent your nights like this for dozens of years? Hearing Ao Jing's words, Shi Jinfeng smiled and said, This muddle-headed brother, perhaps you haven't been able to touch your wife's delicate skin at night before. Then why don't you touch it properly now? Whether it was Ao Jing or Shi Jinfeng, after being played by Xiao Hua, they couldn't help but feel resentment. They couldn't find Xiao Hua, and when facing other weak people, they also had the heart to play with them. This kind of despicable person existed in both the human race and the demon race. Sure enough, the sound of light footsteps came from inside the stone house. Husband! That snake spirit was greatly alarmed and cried out miserably. You can't! -13. Chapter 39-40. However, the footsteps were still so resolute, not shaken by the snake spirit's panic. Feng Wu's expression changed as he watched from nearby. This Feng Wu was naturally Xiao Hua's transformation. In fact, it wasn't much of a transformation. Xiao Hua only needed to slightly reveal the heavenly phoenix within his body, and that was enough to scare Ao Jing and the other dragons. Feng Wu could stop Ma Jinfeng from killing the snake spirit, but he couldn't stop the man from walking out of the stone house. Moreover, although Ao Jing and Ma Jinfeng were clearly trying to sow discord, the hand that would reveal the truth was on the man. The man had the right to know the truth, and Xiao Hua had no right to stop him. The man's figure appeared, and his hand slowly approached the snake spirit's body. The snake spirit's body trembled slightly, and slowly moved, trying to dodge. However, the man didn't give up, and followed the direction of the snake spirit's movement again. The snake spirit's body trembled violently for a moment before suddenly stopping. She looked at the man's resolute face with a hint of sadness in her eyes, and a look of desperation appeared in her eyes. The snake spirit no longer dodged. She raised her illusory hand slightly and held the man's hand. The man hurriedly touched the snake spirit's arm, and the panic on his face faded slightly. However, the snake spirit immediately pulled his hand, and bit by bit, it moved upwards, towards the place where the scales hadn't transformed. The man's arm trembled slightly, and he was somewhat hesitant, but also somewhat resolute. The distance of less than a foot actually took a full half a cup of tea's time. Not to mention the howling sea breeze, even the crowd of demons and shrimp soldiers and crab generals stopped moving, as if they were waiting for some kind of outcome. The man's hand finally touched the snake spirit's ice-cold scales, and the moment he touched the scales, the coldness struck the man like a bolt of lightning. The man's arm trembled, and his entire body twitched. His face revealed disbelief, and his empty eyes seemed to flash with spirit, as if he had seen many things. However, the man's mouth seemed to say, You! And it was unknown what he wanted to say, and then, there was no more. Then, the man collapsed on the ground, white foam coming out of his mouth. In just a few breaths, the breath he breathed out was less than the breath he breathed in. The snake spirit looked coldly at the man's hand, which was now firmly gripping a piece of scale on the snake spirit's body. Even in the face of death, he did not loosen his grip. The man died. His grayish-white eyes stared fixedly at the sky, as if he had died with his eyes wide open. His hand was still stretched out, strangling the snake spirit's scales. The snake spirit raised her hand, and with a crack, she broke off the scale. The man's hand fell to the ground. The snake spirit reached out to cover the man's eyes and said in a low voice, "Su Lang, I thought that after accompanying you for your entire life, I had already become your true love in your heart. You wouldn't care about my demon body anymore. Actually, there are many times when I want to tell you the truth. I want to know if you care that I'm a snake spirit, but I'm afraid of seeing something I don't want to see. I thought that once we reached this place, I would be able to accompany you to the end of the journey and let you have a perfect ending. But the heavens want me to know what you're thinking. Stories are just stories. The more I tell them, the more you listen to them. What I ask and what you answer are not reality." When the illusion had become a thing of the past, when you really faced reality, you actually couldn't believe that you were actually scared to death by your first wife who had accompanied you for decades, and that you were actually scared to death by your first wife who had taken care of you all your life. The ending of this story is really laughable. Su Lang, how can you make me believe in the affection of this world? Demons will always be demons. What's the point of talking about feelings with humans? Ao Jing was also surprised by this unexpected ending, but seeing the snake spirit so sad, he couldn't help but sneer. Maybe it's time to end it. The snake spirit waved her hand and picked up the man's corpse. She looked at Ao Jing indifferently. Although she was still afraid, she still asked, "Can this concubine go now?" Go. Ao Jing waved his hand. Xiaohua asked strangely, "Where are you taking this human's corpse?" After a human dies, it's important to be buried in peace. This concubine will bury him. The snake spirit looked at Xiaohua and replied, "Alas, go." Xiaohua flapped his wings and sighed. "This old man should also go. After staying here for a few years, I didn't expect that you two would have such an ending. It's really beyond this old man's expectations." This old man often heard humans say that the world in people's hearts is often the most perfect. Many people don't dare to open their eyes and face reality because the world in front of them is too cruel. There are too many unsatisfactory things. This kid surnamed Su seems to be a pure and kind person from his speech and behavior. He even helped my demon race since he was young. Unfortunately, a pure and kind person is not necessarily a wise and brave person. His eyes are blind, and his heart is even more blind. After he finished speaking, Xiaohua spread his wings and a whirlwind appeared. Xiaohua's body turned into a phoenix that was dozens of feet long. As his wings danced, demonic clouds lingered around him. The clouds flickered and his demonic body instantly flew a few miles away, gradually disappearing into the sea breeze. Second Prince. Seeing Xiaohua fly away, Ma Yingfeng whispered, "This Feng Wu is a demon expert. Alas, if not for today's matter, we could have become friends." Ao Jing smiled bitterly. After watching Xiaohua fly away, the snake spirit also rolled up the demonic clouds and went inland. He whispered, "Since this matter has happened, let's wait for another chance." "Yes." Ma Yingfeng nodded. He then looked at the several demon experts in the distance and whispered. This subordinate suddenly thought of something. That human who escaped, was he the Confucian cultivator who took out the Immortal Palace's token? Should this subordinate and the others search Yilingbei? Naturally, we have to search. This Confucian cultivator actually dared to ruin my North Sea Dragon Palace's matter. We can't let him go easily. Ao Jing nodded. However, it's hard to say whether this human is from the Immortal Palace or not. After all, the Immortal Palace's people have already revealed their identities. He can't directly attack my North Sea Dragon Palace. But then again, the human race is best at creating a diversion. He revealed his identity, and thought that we wouldn't suspect him. Then, he saved Jiangxing. He used Jiangxing to provoke the dragon palaces of the four seas so that the Immortal Palace could benefit. At this point, Ma Yingfeng continued in a low voice. Also, Baxia 47869, who fought with Jiangxing, was also rescued by a Confucian cultivator. This Confucian cultivator disguised as a Taoist cultivator must be related to Baxia 47869. Yes, that's possible. Ao Jing nodded. Check Baxia's records and see if you can find any clues. Actually, there are no more than a few possibilities. One is that the remnants of the Heavenly Abode River asked the Confucian cultivator to help. They borrowed Baxia's power to sneak into the arena and save Jiangxing. The first possibility was that the Confucian cultivator wanted to save Baxia and Jiangxing along the way. Another is that the Confucian cultivator knew these two and saved them at the same time. Yes, Your Highness's analysis is very reasonable. Ma Yingfeng smiled. No matter what, this Confucian cultivator disguised himself as a Taoist cultivator and came to my arena with bad intentions. No, if that Confucian cultivator wanted to save Jiangxing, he could have just entered the arena. Why did he drag Baxia into it? Also, if he wanted to make a move, he could have done it before Jiangxing's fight. Why wait until Jiangxing and Baxia make their move? Ao Jing suddenly realized something, shock appearing on his face. Could it be that the Confucian cultivator wanted to save Baxia? And Jiangxing was just doing it in passing? Damn it! Ao Jing anxiously said. Ma Jifeng, you're right. Quickly go and investigate the background of this Baxia 4786-9. Since he's Baxia 4786-9, he's from the Baxia arena. Why would he come to my Yazi arena? Could it be? Ma Yingfeng smiled bitterly at Ao Jing's words. He naturally knew about Xian Kong's arrangements, but how could he dare to tell Ao Jing? Then, what about the Immortal Palace? Ma Yingfeng asked in a low voice. Investigate. Of course we have to investigate. Ao Jing sneered. I can't find the Confucian cultivator or the Taoist cultivator, but I can still find the human in Yuling Bay. Let's see if I can't turn Yuling Bay upside down. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful Ao Jing was, even if he turned Yuling Bay upside down, it would be impossible for him to find traces of Xiaohua. Because Xiaohua turned into a phoenix and flew away right in front of him. This was something that Ao Jing had never dreamed of. A heavenly phoenix with a monstrous aura, whose bloodline was even purer than his, the second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace, was actually the human Confucian cultivator he was looking for. Xiaohua's heavenly phoenix demonic body spread its wings and soared along with the sea breeze. Looking at the vast sky and the boundless North Sea, a rare kind of comfort involuntarily emerged from the bottom of its heart. Xiaohua opened its mouth and let out a phoenix cry. This sound resounded through the sky. Not only did it shatter the clouds, it even stirred up the seawater in the vicinity of several dozen li layer upon layer of waves, with Xiaohua as the center, spread out in all directions. It looked like a medium-sized storm had already begun to form. Awesome! Awesome! Xiaohua enjoyed the flight and couldn't help but think to himself. No wonder the ancients said, Great Peng rises with the wind one day, soaring up 90,000 li. This poem is refreshing to read, but when I really fly, the feeling is even more inconceivable. Freedom is just like this, to swim freely in the universe, to soar between heaven and earth, to be unrestrained, to do as one pleases. This kind of freedom should be the end of my cultivation. In the future, not to mention the carefree domain, even the void-shattering realm will be as relaxed and free as this. After flying for less than half an hour, in addition to the boundless sea of clouds, there was only the boundless blue sea. Xiaohua knew that he couldn't fly deeper into the North Sea. He released his soul consciousness and looked around. After confirming that there were no demons following him, and there was no demon expert's consciousness, he returned to his original appearance. Then he took out the Pegasus and flying carriage. Relying on his terrible sense of direction, he urged the flying carriage to fly to another place in the hidden immortal continent. -13. Chapter 39-41. Xiao Hua urged the Pegasus to sit inside the flying carriage. He secretly pondered over his actions along the way and felt that there was nothing inappropriate. Only then did his mind enter the space to check and sort out the gains of this auction. After nearly an hour, Xiao Hua felt that it was about time and released his soul consciousness. Sure enough, at the edge of his soul consciousness, he saw the appearance of land. Moreover, there was no bay or human figure on this land. It was not Yuling Bay at all. This naturally didn't exceed Xiao Hua's expectations. He calmly put away the flying chariot and Pegasus, then used the water escape technique to reach the shore. He raised his hand and took the mountain river seal in his hand, then released Jiangxing from the space. Jiangxing had been standing in the space like a wooden chicken. Suddenly, he felt his body tighten and could move again. He hastily waved the sky piercer and guarded left and right. When he saw Xiao Hua, he could not help but be stunned. The sky piercer pointed at Xiao Hua and stood there in a daze. Jiangxing! Xiao Hua did not dare to waste time and said in the demon language, "This Xiao rescued you from the Yazi arena. That North Sea Dragon Palace's second prince, Ao Jing, has been chasing after you. I'm afraid you have the North Sea Dragon Palace's warrior slave seal on your body. This Xiao wants to help you get rid of it first. Don't resist." Okay. Jiangxing was not a fool. He did not ask why Xiao Hua knew the demon language, nor did he ask why Xiao Hua's cultivation was so high at this time. He only gave a simple reply. Xiao Hua patted his forehead and used the illusion breaker eye. Those silver-white eyes looked around Jiangxing's body. Jiangxing felt a chill coming from his body. It was as if those expressionless eyes saw through his body from the inside out. Don't move, don't resist! Just as Jiangxing could not help but tremble slightly, several layers of dark green brilliance gushed out from between Xiao Hua's eyebrows again. The soul strands that were hard to see with the naked eye split into several strands and entered Jiangxing's body. When the soul strands touched Jiangxing's body, the body naturally resisted. Jiangxing hurriedly dispersed the defense of the body. Those soul strands instantly penetrated Jiangxing's blood vessels. Ha! In just a moment, Xiao Hua frowns and says in surprise, "The North Sea Dragon Palace's slave warrior seal is really something. No wonder. No, this isn't the slave warrior seal." However, several strange waves flashed with a faint brilliance, as they strangely wandered within Jiangxing's blood vessels. Although Xiao Hua's delusion-breaker eyes could see them, his soul strands could not capture these waves. It was not as simple as when Xiao Hua saw Xian Kong use the dragon stratagem to extract the warrior slave seal from Yuanya's body. At this point, how could Xiao Hua not know that the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint in Jiangxing's body was far from something the warrior slave imprint could compare to? Wang Wang. When Xiao Hua frowned slightly, the soul strands have already retracted. Another layer of green light appeared between his eyebrows. It was Xiao Hua's washing heaven and earth technique. As soon as the green light appeared, it immediately turned into a green seal text. This green seal text fell into Jiangxing's body, causing a burst of rather simple sound. This sound, in Jiangxing's ears, seemed to be born from his body. Jiangxing only felt his blood vessels rapidly surging, as if there were thousands of small hands in his blood vessels grabbing him at the same time. In just a moment, Jiangxing suddenly felt his body become light. Xiao Hua's voice sounded in his ears again. "Jiangxing, this Xiao removing the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint has attracted Ao Jing's attention. Don't move, this Xiao will take you and fly away." When Jiangxing heard this, he was a little unhappy, but before he could react, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and grabbed his neck. A wisp of fire flashed, and Xiao Hua's figure disappeared with Jiangxing. Poor Jiangxing was born with divine strength, but he had gone through several battles and almost died in the arena. How could he resist Xiao Hua's tiger and wolf hands now? He was held in Xiao Hua's hand like a little chick. In the time it took to eat a meal, clouds of fire appeared in the sky. A fire dragon roared and flew out of the fire clouds. The huge dragon head hung down from the sky with a ferocious look. Its eyes, which were comparable to flying swords, swept across the place where Xiaohua and Jiangxing had just stood. Then, the fire dragon roared and sniffed around a few times. Hurricanes swept across the ground, lifting pieces of gravel. This fire dragon was naturally Ao Jing. Xiaohua removing the imprint in Jiangxing's blood vessels immediately aroused Ao Jing's vigilance. Ao Jing didn't have time to inform Xian Kong and the other dragon generals. He first transformed into a dragon and chased over. However, he was still too late. Except for a trace of the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint, there was nothing left here. How is this possible? Who dares to remove the demon imprisoning knot of mine North Sea Dragon Palace on the side of the North Sea? Ao Jing was furious. He opened his mouth and spat out a raging fire, burning an area of several miles. This Confucian cultivator, other than someone from the Immortal Palace, how could he have such a powerful method? A Taoist cultivator? A Confucian cultivator? Tui! It's just a smokescreen from the Immortal Palace. They want to trick me. Damn it, I'll definitely report this to my father. How dare they destroy the North Sea Dragon Palaces? Plan to lure the enemy. Ao Jing cursed angrily for a moment. He was already furious and had lost all sense of reason. The decision he had made calmly earlier was now nothing but bullshit in his eyes. He flew up and was about to return when Xian Kong hurriedly chased after him with some shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Humph! Ao Jing snorted coldly. He ignored Xian Kong and swayed his dragon tail as he flew towards Yuling Bay. On the other hand, Xian Kong stopped in midair. He glanced at the flames on the ground that hadn't been extinguished, and the ground that had been charred yellow, and then he sighed and waved his hand. Everyone, return to Feather Spirit Bay! However, before he could fly 100 feet, he hurriedly stopped and looked into the distance respectfully. After a moment, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. He ordered, "Pass down the second prince's order. Track down the people from the Immortal Palace with all our strength. If you find any trace of them, report it immediately." Yes. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals all scattered and went in different directions. Xian Kong set up a demon cloud and followed Ao Jing back to Yuling Bay. Ao Jing thought that the Confucian cultivator in his eyes had already left Yuling Bay with Jiangxing. However, he didn't know that he had already been lured away by Xiaohua. Xiaohua only flew for a moment before he asked Jiangxing for the direction of Yuling Bay. He turned and flew towards Yuling Bay. Just as Ao Jing was getting angry, Xiaohua had already flown to the left side of Yuling Bay. Xiaohua's figure landed between some mountain peaks. He put down Jiangxing and narrowed his eyes as he looked in the direction of Yuling Bay. Previously, Xiaohua had left in a hurry and didn't have time to put the green-robed Xiaohua into the space. At this moment, the green-robed Xiaohua had already sensed Xiaohua's arrival. He had urged the formless Yuaning to return. Xiaohua turned to Jiangxing and said, "Jiangxing, you must have recognized me. I'm the Taoist cultivator who fought against you when you flooded Longevity Town that year. In order to find Dragon Lady Jianghong in Longevity Town, you didn't hesitate to use the water of Liao River and treat the people of the human race as weeds. I shouldn't have saved you, but because you were eager to save your master and because I have some faith with Jianghong, the people of Longevity Town didn't lose too many lives because of you. I saved you from the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Your Heavenly Abode River scheme is too big, so I don't dare to get involved easily. You know what happened today, and you don't need to worry about my kindness. You can go by yourself. Let's not meet again." As he spoke, the green-robed Xiaohua had already flown over. Xiaohua withdrew his yuaning and the green-robed Xiaohua entered his body. Xiaohua instantly had a clear understanding of the situation after he left. Thus, he said to Jiangxing, "Oh right, I heard that the North Sea Dragon Palace has already sent out shrimp soldiers and crab generals to search for you and me. I won't be returning to Yuling Bay anymore. You don't have to go either." After he finished speaking, Xiaohua urged his magic power and was about to flee into the distance. However, before his figure could disappear, Jiangxing's words made him stand there in a daze. Jiang Hong fell into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace with me, Jiangxing said, his words like gold. What? Xiaohua turned his head and asked in disbelief. Jiang Hong is your family's dragon princess. How did she fall into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace with you? How did you protect your princess? Jiangxing wasn't surprised by Xiaohua's reproach. He even blushed a little as he explained in a low voice. I escorted my family's princess to Yulingbei to meet with Jiang Che and the others. Unfortunately, before he could finish, Xiaohua waved his hand coldly. Forget it. The matter of your heavenly abode river has nothing to do with me. Who captured Jiang Hong? I won't. Just like how he interrupted Jiangxing's words, Xiaohua was unable to continue speaking at this point. Louis saw Jiang Hong as his own sister. He would rather suffer than let Jiang Hong get hurt. Louis was his favorite disciple. If Jiang Hong was captured by the North Sea Dragon Palace, her ending was needless to say. If she wasn't a princess, she would have been sent to the arena to die like Jiangxing. If he didn't rescue Jiang Hong, how would he face Louis in the future? Seeing that Xiaohua didn't speak, Jiangxing said, Jiang Che and the others are in Yulingbei. If you don't want to do it directly, please send me to Flowing Lightning Residence. Xiaohua looked at Jiangxing from head to toe. At this moment, Jiangxing's physical injuries were still very serious. It was impossible for Jiangxing to safely find Jiang Che by himself. Even if he didn't want to save Jiang Hong, he should send Jiangxing to Flowing Lightning Residence. Moreover, how could he not try to save Jiang Hong? Forget it. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. For my disciples' happiness, I can only be a good person again. Xiaohua said this in human language. He didn't want Jiangxing to hear it, so Jiangxing didn't understand. But looking at Xiaohua's expression, Jiangxing knew Xiaohua's choice. Then Xiaohua took out the mountain and river seal and said, Ao Jing should be back soon. Come in. When I find Flowing Lightning Residence, I'll let you out. Thank you, fellow Immortal Xiao, Jiangxing said with a smile. He wasn't surprised by Xiaohua's help. -13. Chapter 39-42. Xiaohua shook the mountain river seal and retrieved Jiangxing. He then activated his flying technique and flew towards Feather Spirit Bay. Not long after, Xiaohua arrived at the place where he met the snake spirit. Looking at the familiar place, Xiaohua sighed. In just one night, so many things had happened, which made Xiaohua realize a lot. At this time, Yulingbei was different from before. Whether it was humans or demons, there were much fewer people. The shops and tents were equally desolate. Xiaohua identified the direction and landed on the ground. Seeing a Confucian cultivator hurriedly flying by, he hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his hands. Greetings, fellow Immortal! That Confucian cultivator looked at Xiaohua and said coldly, What do you want? Sorry to disturb you, fellow Immortal. May I know where Flowing Thunder Residence is? Xiaohua didn't get angry and asked with a smile. Flowing Thunder Residence? I don't know. Hearing this, that Confucian cultivator waved his hand and flew away without thinking. Damn it, we're all humans. Even if we're different, there's no need to be like this. Xiaohua sneered, and then he looked left and right. After that, he flew over a few hundred meters and blocked the path of a leopard spirit that was similarly riding a demonic cloud. Fellow Immortal, I wonder if fellow Immortal knows of the Lightning Flow Residence? Flowing Thunder Residence? That leopard spirit's yellow eyes turned a few times as if he was thinking, then he shook his head and said, I don't know. You'd better ask other demons. Seeing the leopard spirit hurriedly leave, Xiaohua pinched his chin and became anxious. It can't be, right? I don't know one, I don't know two, this Jiangxing can't be lying to me, right? Looking around, Xiaohua walked into a small tent. The inside of the tent was similar to a shop, but it was very small and there weren't many things. Seeing Xiaohua enter, a shrimp-like member of the sea race hurriedly greeted him and said with a smile, Fellow Immortal, what do you want to choose? Xiaohua looked at those ordinary pearls and said with a smile, I don't want to buy anything, I just want to ask for directions. Hee, fellow immortal, please tell me. The shrimp-like member's attitude was very good. Does fellow immortal know Flowing Thunder residence? Xiaohua said. Seeing the sea shrimp's hesitant appearance, Xiaohua started to feel apprehensive. Sure enough, the sea shrimp shook his head and said, Sorry, immortal friend. I've only been in Yuling Bay for half a year. I've never heard of the place you mentioned. If you want to find out, it's best to find the demons who have lived here for a long time. They should know. As soon as Sea Shrimp opened his mouth, Xiaohua immediately thought of the general of the sea race near the Bai and Yazi auction hall. Perhaps only the monster race would know such a strange place. Thank you, fellow immortal. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands before walking out of the tent. Who are you? Do you have proof of Yuling Bay? Just as Xiaohua walked out of the tent, a rather shaky voice sounded in front of him. Xiaohua raised his head to look. It was a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals holding shining weapons in their hands. They just happened to pass by this tent. Seeing a Dao sect cultivator walk out from inside, they immediately surrounded Xiaohua. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't put these small shrimps in his eyes. He took out the jade pendant that you gave him and said, This is the proof that this old man got from the Sea Whale King. You can take a look for yourself. Sea Whale King? The leading crab general's eyes bulged out of their sockets. He looked at the jade pendant in Xiaohua's hand and said coldly, As long as it's not a token issued by my Yuling Hall, it's invalid. No matter who you are, you have to come with us to the Yuling Hall. How dare you? Xiaohua snorted and angrily rebuked. These shrimp soldiers and crab generals were so scared that they trembled. However, they had already received the order from the Yuling Hall. No matter how scared they were, they didn't dare to not brace themselves and surround Xiaohua. Roar! At this moment, a bright cloud of fire flashed in the sky. Ao Jing roared all the way back to Yuling Bay. Along the way, he threw fireballs randomly. Who knows how many flowers and plants were damaged? Brothers. Xian Kong's voice sounded behind Ao Jing at the same time. Each team will be divided into two groups. One half will continue to search for suspicious Confucian cultivators. The other half will form a team outside Yuling Bay and spread out to search the inland. Yes. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals surrounding Xiaohua didn't dare to disobey the order. Half of them flew out of Yuling Bay on a demon cloud. The remaining half looked at Xiaohua's clothes, scratched their heads and thought for a moment. They asked, Are you a Confucian cultivator? This old man is a Taoist cultivator. Xiaohua raised his sleeve and said with a smile, This half of the shrimp soldiers and crab generals shook their heads and let Xiaohua go. Then, they continued to search in front. Damn it, with this kind of soldiers, they want to catch this Xiaohua? What a fool's dream. Xiaohua laughed inwardly and flew towards the Yazi auction house. On the contrary, when he arrived near the auction house, apart from a small number of demons on guard, there were fewer shrimp soldiers and crab generals patrolling. The humans and demons who were watching the excitement also disappeared. Even the shops around the auction house were mostly closed. The previous lively scene was nowhere to be seen. However, the shop where the sea race general sold sea relics was still half open. It seemed like it was waiting for Xiaohua. Xiaohua's figure had just stepped into the shop when a respectful voice sounded. Senior is here. Oh? Why are you still here? Xiaohua was slightly taken aback. Who are you? Without waiting for Xiaohua to answer, a yuan thought swept over from afar. It landed on Xiaohua. Soon after, a cold voice sounded. Xiaohua naturally noticed that there were people from the auction house inspecting nearby. He was not afraid of being discovered. When he heard the question, he turned his head and said with a smile, This one is Xiaohua. My Taoist name is Taoist Xiao. What's the matter? General, what's the matter? The person who came was a sea race general wearing armor. He looked like a big octopus. On the side of the armor, several tentacles held several different weapons. He looked very mighty. Taoist Xiao? When the sea general heard this, his expression changed slightly. After all, a Taoist cultivator who could be called a Taoist master should be at the early yuaning stage. He was not someone he could resist. However, the Sea General looked left and right. He swam toward Xiaohua and asked, "What are you doing here? Do you have a certificate issued by my Feather Spirit Palace? This Taoist Xiao is this little one's friend." Yuan hurriedly ran out of the shop and respectfully said to the Sea General, "He came to the Feather Spirit Bay to play. This little one has already helped him obtain a certificate from the Sea Whale King." He. When the Sea General saw Yuan come out, he unconsciously sneered and said, "The Feather Spirit Palace has already issued an order. Apart from the certificate issued by the Feather Spirit Palace, all other certificates are invalid. All human cultivators with invalid certificates are to be detained in the Feather Spirit Palace. Their whereabouts and any suspicious signs will be investigated. Since you are related to this human, you should also come with this general." Yuan was clearly stunned. He took half a step back in fear. However, it was only half a step. He stepped forward and said, "Senior Xiao was invited by this little one. This little one will guarantee his identity with my life. This little one will follow the general to the Feather Spirit Palace." "You!" The Sea General was startled. He was clearly caught off guard. However, he immediately waved his tentacles and said, "What is a small shrimp like you doing in the Feather Spirit Palace? Be a good boy and stay aside." Then the Sea General looked at Xiaohua and said, "Taoist Xiao, do you want to go by yourself? Or do you want this one to invite you? Impudent!" At this moment, a rather dignified voice came from behind Yuan. The owner of the shop, the Sea Race General, walked out and scolded, "This is this general's honored guest, Brew. Why aren't you scramming back?" "Ah?" The Sea General called Brew was shocked when he heard the scolding. He almost naturally bowed and said, "This subordinate greets General Lu." Just as he said this, the Sea General suddenly woke up. He straightened up and coldly looked at the Sea General called Lu and said, "Lu, don't forget. You are no longer a general of the North Sea Dragon Palace. What qualifications do you have to order this general around? This general is here on the orders of the Feather Spirit Palace to investigate suspicious humans. Since you are colluding with this human, you might as well come with this general to the Feather Spirit Palace." Xiaohua coldly watched from the side, his heart somewhat rueful. There was a struggle for power and fame between the human race, and it was easy for people to scheme against each other. Xiaohua clearly smelled this kind of dark smell between the Hai Jiang Lu and the bromine. Lu's face was extremely unsightly. He opened his mouth to say something, but it was very clear that Brew was no longer a small soldier under his command. He could not order him around. But if he let Brew take Xiaohua away, Lu could not bear to. After all, he already saw hope in Xiaohua for a group of old soldiers to get rid of their injuries. It was not that Lu did not think of inviting Xiaohua to the Feather Spirit Palace, and then he would tell him about Xiaohua's abilities. But the problem was, he didn't know if Xiaohua was willing to cooperate with the North Sea Dragon Palace. If Xiaohua wasn't willing, and he had leaked Xiaohua's divine ability, it would bring disaster to Xiaohua. Lu didn't think he would do such a thing. Second, even if Xiaohua was willing to cooperate with the North Sea Dragon Palace, how could the North Sea Dragon Palace waste a divine doctor like Xiaohua on these old soldiers? There was no lack of shrimp soldiers and crab generals in the North Sea Dragon Palace that could not be cured. Xiaohua would not have the free time to treat the old soldiers that he cared about. "What if I can vouch for you?" A faint voice sounded. The Sea Snake D also walked out and coldly looked at Brew. When Brew heard D's voice, he hurriedly retreated. It was as if he had suffered a great loss in D's hands. His several tentacles quickly danced. He was even more shocked. You, what's wrong with me? Can't you recognize me?" D said with a smile. "The dignified Shanghai general is really awe-inspiring. How come I have never seen a soft octopus with a hard bone? Oh my, I forgot. How can an octopus have bones? I really overestimated you." D. Brew's tall figure was like paper in front of D. He slightly swayed. He somewhat inarticulately called out, Why are you here? If you vouch for me. -13. Chapter 39-43. At this point, Bromine hesitated. His two slightly transparent eyes trembled rapidly. He looked at Xiaohua, then looked to the left. He was afraid that this was a trap set for him by D. However, Bromine had been here for a long time, and other soldiers had started to pay attention to this place. This gave Bromine the so-called encouragement. Fine. Bromine clenched his teeth and said, You're the same as Lu. You're no longer a subordinate of the North Sea Dragon Palace. What qualifications do you have to guarantee? Since you're with this human, you can't get away with it. You don't know what happened in the Yazi arena last night. Let's go. Bromine took a few steps forward, and the weapon on his tentacles danced arrogantly. Is that so? Are you sure you want me to go? Drip took a step forward with a faint smile. This simple step scared Bromine into retreating a few steps, as if he didn't dare to get too close to Drip. You're pissing me off. Just as Drip was about to push Bromine back, a low, powerless voice came from behind Drip. Then, Chio's grandfather, Old Shrimp, staggered out with a shabby crutch. Without saying a word, he swung the crutch at Bromine. Bromine's body was naturally much bigger than Chio's grandfather. The crutch also looked funny. Bromine only needed to lift any one of his tentacles to knock it away. However, seeing Old Shrimp's crutch coming at him, Bromine didn't dare to move. He just let Old Shrimp's crutch hit him. Bromine could only wave his tentacles and the weapon in the air. He shouted in exasperation. Old man, you're a veteran who's been through fire and water. You've bled a lot for the North Sea Dragon Palace. You've done a lot in battle, but you can't delay me. I'll guarantee for Daoist Xiao. Old Shrimp said loudly. If you want to take Daoist Xiao, then take me too. You can't do it either. Bromine didn't dare to fight back, but when he saw some of his colleagues coming over, he gritted his teeth and answered. Of course Old Shrimp can't do it. What about us? We'll all guarantee for Daoist Xiao. As he said that, another group of old Sea Tribe members came out of Lu's shop. Some were Sea Tribe members, some were Sea Tribe members, some were loaches, and some were crabs. This. Bromine was at a loss for words. He glanced at the soldiers of the North Sea Dragon Palace who had surrounded them, then quickly fled. Although these veterans didn't have any official positions and were on the verge of death, they had made outstanding military contributions. They were all old ruffians who couldn't rub sand in their eyes. They were far from what the current soldiers could afford to offend. Usually, these old ruffians would reprimand these soldiers whenever they saw them, let alone now that Bromine had provoked them. The group of Dragon Palace soldiers saw that the situation was not right and ran away, leaving only Bromine to stay behind. Bromine was dumbfounded at the sight of so many veterans. His head was bigger than a mountain. He didn't think that his duty of inviting this strange human to the Feather Spirit Palace would cause so much trouble. Hee, fellow immortals. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. There's no need to make things too difficult for this general. Although this Xiao participated in the Yazi auction hall's auction, this Xiao withdrew from the auction midway for some reason. Although this Xiao doesn't know what happened in the auction, if this Xiao needs to go and ask, this Xiao has no objections. Look at Daoist Xiao! An old loach clapped his hands. He's really a Daoist master. He can kill you with a raise of his hand, but he's still talking to you calmly. Little octopus, do you think this kind of Daoist master is the human Confucian cultivator you're looking for? An old crab waved his claws and shouted. If Daoist Xiao wants to go to the Feather Spirit Palace, we'll go together. Wherever Daoist Xiao goes, we'll go together. Hearing this, Xiaohua didn't need to look anymore. This must be an old ruffian. He hadn't even met Xiaohua and he was already relying on Xiaohua. This. Bromine began to step back and said with a somewhat panicked tone, The Feather Spirit Palace is looking for a human Confucian cultivator. This Daoist Xiao is obviously not one. Just now my eyes were playing tricks on me. Bromine was a junior in front of these veterans. He couldn't afford to offend any of them. Before the veterans surrounded him, he hurriedly withdrew. At this time, Bromine wasn't afraid of anything going wrong. Although these veterans looked old and weak, they had all risked their lives for the North Sea Dragon Palace for so many years. Their words might not be as useful as his in the Feather Spirit Palace, but in the Feather Spirit Bay, 100 of him couldn't compare to one of them. Seeing Bromine leave with his tail between his legs, several veterans still scolded themselves. Damn it, where did this little bastard come from? How dare he behave so atrociously in front of me? Xiao Hua smiled and didn't say anything. He just stood aside. Taoist Xiao. Lu stood aside and said with a smile, I'm sorry to make you laugh. Bromine was a little narrow-minded, but he was timid and didn't have too many bad intentions. I guess he saw that Taoist Xiao was a human, and wanted to take credit for it. In fact, if Taoist Xiao wasn't the Confucian cultivator they were looking for, they wouldn't make things too difficult for Taoist Xiao. Hee, it doesn't matter. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, If it wasn't for the fact that I was still worried about your injuries, I'm afraid I would have left long ago and ignored his little tricks. Many thanks for Taoist Zhao's pity. Seeing Xiao Hua return, Lu was already happy in his heart. However, he was still uneasy. He didn't know whether Xiao Hua came back for the sea sirira or to save the old sea shrimp. Now that he heard it, his heart had already flown away. His eyes blurred and he hurriedly bowed to express his thanks. Sea Snakely moved his body and said in a low voice, Let's invite Taoist Xiao in first. Now that there are changes in the auction, the entire Feather Spirit Bay is heavily guarded. It's better not to attract the attention of the Feather Spirit Palace. Yes, yes. Lu woke up and hurriedly said, Taoist Xiao, please come in. Please, please. A group of veterans were now very obedient. They all had smiles on their faces and opened the door of the shop. Although the other party was from the sea race and might have human blood on their hands, Xiao Hua saw that they were all like the old sea shrimp. Many parts of their bodies were wrapped in seaweed, and some strange smell floated out from the seaweed. Xiao Hua still raised his hand and said, Seniors! Speaking until here, Xiao Hua stopped again. The sea race was a monster, there was no way to call them seniors. However, before Xiao Hua's face became awkward, the group of veterans hurriedly bowed and said, Taoist Xiao, please! And, seeing this, Xiao Hua no longer modestly declined and stepped into the shop. Then, these veterans hurriedly came in under the lead of the old sea shrimp. Taoist Xiao, please sit! After Lu walked into the shop, he hurriedly took out a chair from who knows where and respectfully placed it beside Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua looked at the group of veterans. Those veterans hurriedly raised their hands and said with a smile, Taoist Xiao, please! All right. Xiao Hua sat down, looked at Li and said with a smile, Is this Zhao's pill easy to use? Li swam over and prostrated herself in front of Xiao Hua. She said in a low voice, This one thanks Taoist Xiao for the pill. This one's illness has been completely cured. Even, this one feels that my strength can still increase in the future. Oh! Xiao Hua was slightly surprised, but he immediately understood. The soul-nourishing pill refined by the green-robed Xiao Hua was refined in the space. There were 3 moon stars and 6 sun stars in the space, so the power of the stars and moon naturally surpassed that of the hidden immortal continent. Moreover, the soul-nourishing pill nourished Di's soul, allowing Di to better control her own bloodline through her soul. Moreover, the secrets of the sea snake's bloodline could also be known by Di, so Di could use these to enhance her strength. After understanding, Xiao Hua said with a smile, Then I congratulate Taoist Xiao. I didn't expect that the pill that this one casually refined would have such an effect. Casually? Casually refined? Li was somewhat dumbfounded. In her eyes, that pill was really miraculous and wonderful. At the same time, Lu said in surprise, That pill was really refined by Taoist Xiao? And naturally! Although it was refined by the green-robed Xiao Hua, was there any difference between this and Xiao Hua's refinement? Xiao Hua naturally admitted with a smile. That. Lu opened his mouth as if he wanted to ask, but he was somewhat hesitant. Xiao Hua said straightforwardly, Since this one has returned, I also want to see if I can do anything for you. After all, if your illness can be cured, then you can hunt less sea relics. This is also a matter of boundless virtue. It's just that this one doesn't know much about your sea race's healing techniques. Similarly, I also don't have the pill formula for refining pills or medicines. This is easy, an old ruffian shouted without hesitation. We will kill our way to the apricot forest medicine shop and make them hand over whatever pill formula. Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. The sea snake hurriedly said, If you want to go, then go. In this way, even if Taoist Xiao wants to help, he won't dare. Yes, I was just joking. Taoist Xiao shouldn't take it seriously. That old ruffian laughed mischievously. He naturally understood that Xiaohua wouldn't let him loot the human race's medicine shop and harm the human race's interests. Taoist Xiao, Lu said from the side. This one also thought for a long time just now. It's not realistic to get the pill formula from the apricot forest medicine shop. Moreover, his pill formula might not be useful. Taoist Xiao's pill formula still needs to be obtained from the North Sea Dragon Palace, Jiaxing Lu, Yazi Auction House, Li Lai Trading Company, and Luoyi Merchant Union. Of course the Dragon Palace has it, but the Feather Spirit Palace may not give it. Jiaxing Lu, Yazi Auction House, and Li Lai Trading Company need to bid. To be honest, not to mention whether these things are available, we don't have many sea crystals and may not be able to bid. The last place left is the Luoyi Merchant Union. This one has heard of the Luoyi Merchant Union's reputation before. It's a merchant union formed by the demon race of the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. It's not large in scale and its transactions are always fair. Moreover, they are indeed resourceful and can get things that ordinary demon race can't. This one wants to see Taoist Xiao and ask him clearly. This one will go find the Luoyi Merchant Union now. -13. Chapter 39-44. Oh? Xiaohua smiles and turns to look at Yuan, asking, Is this your recommendation again? Yuan hurriedly waves his hand and says, This is not what I said. General knew about it, and then asked about it. That's why I reported it to you. Xiaohua thinks for a while and says to Lu, It would be best if you could find Bai Wen who recorded the pill recipe in Luoyi Merchant Union. I would be able to refine pills according to the recipe. Taoist Xiao, you don't want to go with me? Lu is a bit surprised and disappointed. Xiaohua smiles. I don't know much about the pill recipes of the monster race. It doesn't matter if I go or not. You only need to ask the monster race in Luoyi Merchant Union for the pill recipe. They should be in charge of it. Moreover, I have something important to do. I'm afraid I can't accompany you. All right. Lu naturally wants Xiaohua to go with him. However, Xiaohua has something important to do, so he can't force him. Beside him, Drop hastily asks tactfully, Taoist Xiao, what is it? Do you want to do it in Yulingbei? And Xiaohua nods. After thinking for a while, he asks, Do you know a place called Drifting Pavilion? Drifting Pavilion? Drop thinks for a while and shakes his head. I am familiar with every place in Yulingbei, but I have never heard of Drifting Pavilion. Could it be that this drifting lightning abode that Taoist Xiao mentioned is located outside of Yulingbei? Xiaohua shakes his head and replies, No, it's in Yulingbei. Drop looks at some old soldiers on the left. After thinking for a while, he says in a low voice, Taoist Xiao, if possible, you should ask these old sea race, Xiaohua nodded, then raised his head to look at the closed shop door and said, Everyone, this Xiao came to Yulingbei to look for an old friend. He left a message for this Xiao, saying that he was at the Drifting Pavilion, but this Xiao couldn't find him anywhere in Yulingbei. I wonder if anyone can answer my question? Drifting Pavilion? The group of old Oceanids are also slightly startled. They all look at each other, wanting to share Xiaohua's burden. However, they seem to have never heard of this name before. One of the old Oceanids even asks, Taoist Xiao, do you think this flowing lightning residence, is it the residence? Or a place name? Or a brothel that you humans often talk about? Xiaohua smiled and said, "This Xiao doesn't know either, I only know the name of this place." "Oh." Suddenly, old sea shrimp seemed to have thought of something and said hurriedly, "I remember now. It seems that there is such a place. But, oh, you know about it?" Hearing this, Xiaohua was overjoyed. Seeing that old sea shrimp didn't say anything, he asked, "Could it be that there's something strange about this place?" "Indeed." Seeing Xiaohua being so cautious, old sea shrimp winked at the group of old sea race members and whispered a few words to Xiaohua. Sure enough, Xiaohua's brows slightly creased. After a while, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Since this Xiao has come, then I should still make a trip. Everyone, just stay here, or go somewhere together. General, hurry to the Louis Merchant Union. When this Xiao pays a visit to my old friend, I can refine some pills or medicines for you." Okay. Lu nodded vigorously and said, "I'll go now. When I find the pill formula, we'll meet at Yaoshi. This place is too close to the Yazi auction house. After all, it's inconvenient for Taoist Xiao to be here." "Indeed. You all go first. I'll immediately go find a Feather Spirit Palace certificate for Taoist Xiao," an old sea race member said hurriedly. Xiaohua watched as Lu opened the shop door and the group of old sea race members walked out. He said to the fish monster, "Yuan, take this Xiao to that place." "Okay, this little one understands." The fish monster was extremely excited. It rubbed its illusory hands and nodded vigorously. Sea Snakely hurriedly said, "Taoist Xiao, do you want me to accompany you?" "No need." Xiaohua waved his hand. "You go with Lu to the Louis Merchant Union. Since there's a pill formula, there must be some demonic herbs, demonic fruits, and so on. You also help to take a look. Lu is not a shrewd businessman." Li covered his mouth and said, "He's not a human to begin with." And Xiaohua nodded. He looked around and said, "If possible, give all the sea relics in this shop to this Xiao. This Xiao has a use for them." "No problem," Li said without hesitation. "This one will pack it up right away. When Taoist Xiao returns, I'll give them all to you." Xiaohua took out a qianquan bag and handed it to Li. He directly took the fish monster and prepared to leave the shop. The little sea shrimp waiting at the entrance of the shop hurriedly said shyly, "Taoist Xiao, Grandpa and the others have gone to find a certificate for Taoist Xiao. Please wait for a moment." "They really went?" Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Thus, Xiaohua simply stood inside the shop and watched Li tidy up the sea relics in the shop. On the other hand, the somewhat tyrannical shop assistant from before had long disappeared. After a while, Li tidied up all the sea relics in the shop and gave the qianquan bag to Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked inside and saw that there were indeed a lot of sea relics. Thinking about how each sea relic was the life of a sea race member, Xiaohua increasingly felt that doing these things was worth it. Xiaohua had just received the qianquan bag when the old sea shrimp brought the two old sea race members back hurriedly. From the looks of it, they didn't seem to be injured at all. Xiaohua received a fish card and carefully held it. He smiled and said, "Many thanks, everyone. You can go and rest first. When this Xiao comes back, I will help you refine pills." Seeing Xiaohua treasuring the fish card very much, the old sea shrimp and the others were quite happy. They cupped their hands and said, "Thank you for everything, Taoist Xiao." Seeing the old sea shrimp and the others leave, Xiaohua also waved his hand and hurriedly took the fish monster out of the shop. After a while, the fish monster asked in a low voice, "Taoist Xiao, where are you going?" "Bayan." Xiaohua said these two words through sound transmission. "Ah? You want to go to Qi?" The fish monster was shocked and almost blurted out. Fortunately, he only spoke half of it and stopped. Xiaohua smiled and said, "If you don't dare to go, then just point in the direction. This Xiao already knows where it is, I can ask." "No, this little one will take Taoist Xiao there." Yuan clenched his teeth and said. Then, he raised his hand and a demonic cloud appeared under his feet, asking Xiaohua to fly with him. Xiaohua urged his flying technique and followed behind Yuan, flying towards the outside of Yuling Bay. Sure enough, along the way, there were many shrimp soldiers and crab generals patrolling, stopping Xiaohua from time to time. The certificate given to Xiaohua by the old sea shrimp was quite useful. Every sea race took a look at it and didn't ask much, directly letting them go. After flying over the mountain range of Yuling Bay, they arrived at the other side. Before they could get close, a hot aura hit them in the face, and a strong smell of sulfur gradually diffused in the air. Near this hot aura, there were no sea race, and the patrolling shrimp soldiers and crab generals were also gone. After flying for a while, Yuan's figure was already trembling. Obviously, he couldn't adapt to the heat here. Xiaohua said, "Yuan, Chi-Chi must be in front. You don't need to get too close. This old man will go by himself. You find a suitable place to stay. After this old man comes out, I will come to find you." The fish monster stopped in midair and said very shamefully, "Many thanks for Taoist Zhao's sympathy. This little one really can't stand it anymore. And this is a hot place. It's different from the humid life of Yusi race. It's normal that you can't stand it." Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand, then flew forward. The fish monster watched Xiaohua's figure fly over the foothills and fall into the valley. It quickly turned around and flew straight to the inside of Yuling Bay. The salty sea breeze swept up the moisture and fell on the fish monster's body. Only then did the fish monster let out a long sigh of relief. It didn't even transform into its human form and return to its fish form. It twisted in the air, as if it was enjoying it to the extreme. Xiaohua flew over the mountain valley, and in front of him was a sea of scarlet red. Scarlet red mountain rocks, scarlet red sand, and also surging scarlet red lava. However, this scarlet red only covered a range of a few dozen li. Looking further into the valley, there was another stretch of dilapidated fences and dilapidated walls. Some dilapidated stone pillars, collapsed pavilions, and other things piled up in the valley. Many weeds and wild vines wrapped around these buildings. Xiaohua had already learned from old sea shrimp that this valley was called Drifting Pavilion thousands of years ago. It was a place where some monster race gathered. However, there was a change later on. A huge amount of magma was produced overnight, completely destroying the entire Drifting Pavilion. After the monster race left, another monster race occupied this place and changed the name of this place to Chi-Chi. As for why Yuan's expression changed when he heard about this place, it was not only because this place was hot and basically no sea race came here, but also because the monster race that occupied this place was a barbarian, a monster beast that liked to eat sea race. Yuan usually didn't have enough time to hide. Why would he come here? Xiaohua stood in midair and released his divine sense to explore. He had already seen the dried fish hanging on the mountain rock in the depths of the valley. These dried fish were not the kind that ordinary people would hang in their homes. The short ones were a few feet long and the long ones were several shan long. They were all dried up and shrunk to one place. It was obvious that when these barbarians hunted these sea race people, the sea race people's bodies were huge. Xiaohua secretly smiled and said, "This place is not bad." Presumably, the North Sea Dragon Palace also didn't expect Jiangche to be hiding here. Then, Xiaohua let Jiangxing out. The moment Jiangxing came out, he immediately shrunk his neck and looked a little uncomfortable. He then looked around and asked curiously, "This is Drifting Pavilion? I'll let fellow Immortal Jiang know." Xiaohua smiled and said, "This place was originally called Drifting Pavilion. Later on, because magma spewed out, Drifting Pavilion was destroyed. Now it's called Chi-Chi. This." Jiangxing was a little hesitant. He frowned and said, "Since it's called Chi-Chi, why did Jiangche say it's Drifting Pavilion? How can I find Jiangche? Anyway, this is Drifting Pavilion." Xiaohua shrugged and replied, "As for how to find Jiangche, I don't know. However, there's a group of barbarians here who know how to forge weapons. You might as well go and ask them." "All right." Jiangxing thought for a while and nodded. However, after flying for several zhang, he turned his head and asked, "Taoist Xiao, the North Sea Dragon Palace didn't chase after us, right?" "No." Xiaohua looked between the mountain rocks and casually replied, "That's good. Jiangxing smiled and flew down the valley. -13. Chapter 39:45. At the bottom of the valley was an enormous mountain crevice. Within the mountain crevice was a space of hundreds of meters. Within this space, one after another, stone caves surrounded the crimson magma in the center. In front of the stone caves, there were many materials and large pieces of stone scattered about. At the edge of the magma, there were also some weapons submerged in the magma. Only some parts of the handles were exposed. Xiaohua and Jiangxing had just approached this mountain crevice when they were immediately discovered by the demon race. They saw 5 leopards, each about 30 meters in size, holding weapons as they flew over from the left side of the magma on a demon cloud. The leopard in front was holding a dried fish in its hand and was biting it with all its might. Its sharp fangs flashed with a blood-red color. "Stop!" one of the leopards shouted loudly. "Is this a place where you can come?" Jiangxing turned his head to look at Xiaohua and smiled. He flew forward a few steps, cupped his hands, and said, "Ji Pai." Xiaohua was stunned and blinked his eyes. He could be considered proficient in the demon language and dragon language, but he actually didn't understand what Jiangxing was saying. However, since Jiangxing and Jiangche had arranged to meet here, and Jiangxing didn't bring any keepsake, presumably this strange demon language was also what they had agreed on, right? As expected, when the leopard heard Jiangxing speak, its expression changed slightly. The leopard that was eating the dried fish threw away the dried fish in its hand and flew a few steps closer. It also spoke in a similar demon language, but the speed of its speech was even more hurried. The 2 demons spoke a few words, and then they both stretched out their claws and stuck them together. The claws slightly touched a few times, and the rhythm was also different. Then, the leopard raised its head and looked at Xiaohua. On that sinister and strange leopard face, a trace of a smile was squeezed out. Seeing this, Xiaohua also nodded and returned a smile at him. The leopard raised its hand. It was still that strange demon language, which seemed to mean please. Jiangxing transmitted his voice in a low voice. "Spiritual Master Xiao, please follow me." "Okay." Xiaohua knew that Jiangxing was being cautious, so he also sent a sound transmission and flew down with Jiangxing. The other few barbarians also gave way, their faces were also filled with respect. The leopard in front led Xiaohua and Jiangxing into a cave. The inside of the cave was even hotter than the outside. Several streams of magma seeped in from the 4 corners of the cave, then flowed through several grooves and fell into a furnace similar to a cauldron. This furnace was square in shape, and strange demon characters were engraved on it. There were many patterns in the demon characters, and those patterns were actually filled with the splendor of the moon and stars. Seeing this, Xiaohua knew that this was a tool used by the demi-human race and couldn't help but take a few more glances at it. However, he could see that there were only some raw materials in the furnaces, presumably still being refined. When he thought about the weapons in the lava outside the cave, Xiaohua lost interest in taking a closer look. The strength of these barbarians was limited, and they could only use the lava to refine weapons. They had no value to him as a reference. Naturally, there were also some barbarians following behind Xiaohua. When they saw Xiaohua looking at the furnace, they frowned and looked at each other with dissatisfaction in their eyes. After passing through this cave, they arrived at an even larger cave. Inside there were some weapons commonly seen by the sea race, and they seemed to be of good quality. However, Xiaohua's gaze didn't even stop. He directly looked into the cave and saw another deep cave. At this moment, there were several larger barbarians standing in front of the deep cave. The leader of the barbarians walked forward and whispered a few words. Unexpectedly, he also spoke in strange demon characters. The barbarians guarding the deep cave also raised their heads in surprise. They looked at Jiangxing and then at Xiaohua. After a slight hesitation, they muttered a few words before turning around and entering the deep cave. Xiaohua looked at the dark cave and didn't release his divine sense. He then lowered his head and looked at his feet. Below his feet was a layer of magma that had cooled down. It was ochre red in color, and there was some fire-type yuan qi emitting from it, causing the entire cave to be scorching hot. At this moment, Jiangxing turned his head and smiled at Xiaohua, as if indicating for Xiaohua to wait a moment. Xiaohua also smiled and nodded. He didn't mind. After a while, the barbarian came out and waved the large black fork in his hand. "Go in! Damn it, I finally understood a few words!" Xiaohua cursed inwardly as he followed Jiangxing into the deep cave. The deep cave was indeed large. There was a huge stone table with several strange weapons placed on top of it. At the head of the stone table, there was a barbarian that was over 10 zhang tall sitting coldly on a stone bed. Next to it were several other barbarians with graceful figures. They were probably female and were obediently accompanying it. Next to the stone table, there were also a dozen or so barbarians. They were all staring at Xiaohua and Jiangxing with fiendish expressions. Ji-ji-gu-gu. The barbarian opened its mouth and spoke in a difficult demon character. Jiangxing took a few steps forward and also spoke a few words. Then, the barbarian was slightly stunned, as if it didn't dare to believe it. Similarly, the dozen or so barbarians were also stunned. Some of them even looked at the barbarians that had attracted Xiaohua and Jiangxing in disbelief. "What did you say?" The barbarian was a little anxious and finally spoke in a demon character that Xiaohua could understand. "I didn't say anything." Jiangxing turned his head and glanced at Xiaohua. He said coldly, "I already said that I am a dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace. My subordinates have already surrounded this place. All of you, leave behind the things used to forge weapons and hurry up and get out of here. Otherwise, don't blame me for killing all of you. Don't you think that Taoist Master Xiao?" Jiangxing's tone was gloomy. The gaze he used to look at Xiaohua was also sharp, and even had a hint of ridicule. "You!" Xiaohua listened to Jiangxing's baffling words and couldn't help but be stunned. Just like those barbarians from before, when he looked at Jiangxing's gaze again, Xiaohua suddenly understood. After all this fuss, he had been led by the nose by Jiangxing. There was no Jiangche in the flowing lightning residence. Even now, Jiangxing still didn't believe him. Damn it! Without waiting for Xiaohua to say anything, the leader of the barbarians roared angrily and swung his arm. The female barbarians around him were immediately sent flying. The leader of the barbarians pounced towards Xiaohua like a flying mountain. The two claws made a woo-woo whistling sound and instantly slapped in front of Xiaohua's eyes. "You're sick." Xiaohua coldly spat out 2 words at Jiangxing. His left hand waved in midair and the wishful steel staff appeared in his hand. Boom! There was a loud noise and it hit the claws of the barbarians. The claws on the head of the barbarians were very powerful. In the loud noise, a line of sparks appeared. The leader of the barbarians was actually not sent flying by the wishful steel staff. Moreover, the leader of the barbarians actually used the huge force of the wishful steel staff to flash in midair. The thick leopard tail made a woo sound again and swept towards Xiaohua's head. Xiaohua urged his magic power, and the air waves in the nearby space surged. Xiaohua slightly flicked his finger, and a spell was cast. A fist-sized earth shield immediately appeared in front of him. Puff! In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, the tail of the flying leopard hit the earth shield. A thick crack appeared on the earth shield, but it didn't shatter. However, the flying leopard's tail drooped down. It was clearly injured by the counterattack of the earth's shield. Roar! At this moment, the dozens of barbarians next to the stone table roared and rushed towards Xiaohua and Jiangxing respectively. Xiaohua did not face them at all. After blocking the attack of the leader of the barbarians, he sneered and urged the fire escape technique. Shwa! There was a light sound, but a string of flames was born and his figure disappeared from the distance. The barbarians that rushed towards Xiaohua were startled. They looked at each other and 2 of them turned around and chased out of the deep hole, while the rest rushed towards Jiangxing. Roar! Xiaohua appeared outside the mountain valley. Hearing the faint dragon roar in the mountain valley, he snorted coldly and flew towards the top of the mountain valley without stopping. Those dozens of barbarians were only in the light-gathering realm and could not be considered as powerful experts. However, the leader of the barbarians had the strength of the Enlightenment Star realm. If Jiangxing was at his peak, he would be able to put up a fight. As for now, Jiangxing was already injured, so how could he be a match for these barbarians? However, this had nothing to do with Xiaohua. Xiaohua wanted to help Jiangxing with good intentions, but he didn't expect that Jiangxing would make a fool out of him like this. Xiaohua, who looked very reckless, was actually so scheming. It really made Xiaohua's heart cold. Xiaohua's divine sense swept through the bottom of the mountain valley. 2 barbarians led a few weaker ones out. Xiaohua originally wanted to teach these monsters a lesson, but when he saw the scarlet mountain rocks nearby, he sighed. His figure moved, turning into a rainbow and flying into the sky. Then, Xiaohua waved his large sleeve and swept up Yuan, who was standing far away from the mountain rocks, and disappeared in a moment. Where did the Dragon Palace marine soldiers come from? Then, where did that powerful human fly off to? Dozens of barbarians flew up the mountain valley with weapons in hand. Their gazes were all empty. Not only did they not see Xiaohua's figure, the shrimp soldiers and crab generals were also nowhere to be seen. The leader of the barbarians released his divine sense and looked around for a moment. His eyes turned a few times, and he instructed the barbarians behind him. Go to the Feather Spirit Palace and find out if the second prince of the Dragon Palace wants to go back on his word again. Oh, and while you're at it, see what happened in Feather Spirit Bay recently. Yes. The dozens of barbarians scattered and flew away, disappearing in a moment. The 2 barbarians who had chased after Xiaohua were still not at ease. They once again circled the entire mountain valley before descending into the mountain valley. Xiaohua's figure landed in Feather Spirit Bay. Yuan shook his head, looked left and right, and said with a smile, Taoist, have you finished your business? And yes, it's already finished. Bring this Xiao to Yao Shi. Xiaohua nodded, his face not showing any abnormality. Senior, please follow this little one. Seeing that Xiaohua was so serious about his promise, the fish monster was overjoyed. It carefully flew in front of Xiaohua, bringing him into the depths of Feather Spirit Bay. While Xiaohua was flying, he was thinking about how to refine pills for old sea shrimp and the others. At this time, he was not in the mood to be angry about Jiangxing's distrust. After all, from the beginning to the end, Xiaohua was helping Jiangxing with his own wishful thinking. It was normal for Jiangxing to be suspicious, but Xiaohua helping others to this extent was indeed a bit shameful. -13. Chapter 39-46. Now that he thought about it, ever since Xiaohua saved Jiangxing in the Yazi arena, Xiaohua had never let Jiangxing see the fight between him and the North Sea Dragon Palace. How could Jiangxing trust the few names that Xiaohua mentioned? Even if Xiaohua escaped with Jiangxing, Jiangxing still saw the fight between Xiaohua and the North Sea Dragon Palace. If it was Jiangxing, he could also see it as the North Sea Dragon Palace playing hard to get. Jiangxing thought that Xiaohua was bait to capture Jiangche, Jianghong, and the people of the Heavenly Abode River. This was very normal. Since that was the case, what Jiangxing said to Xiaohua earlier should also be a test. In other words, Jianghong was not captured by the North Sea Dragon Palace. Perhaps it was because of this that Jiangxing saw the flaw. And it was also because of this flaw that Xiaohua was relieved. As long as Jianghong was fine, the matter of the Heavenly Abode River had nothing to do with Xiaohua. Especially since Jiangxing drowned Longevity Town, he deserved to die. Xiaohua pulled himself away and left without the slightest bit of hesitation. After flying past some shops, Xiaohua frowned slightly. Everywhere he looked, there were large and small puddles. Some of these puddles were empty, and some of them were floating on the surface of the water. Some of these puddles were filled with filth, and some of them had some members of the sea race floating on them. However, these puddles were emitting an unpleasant odor. This odor was somewhat stinky and rotten. Xiaohua felt that it was very strange. Looking at the end of the puddles, there were some simple origin arrays. Xiao Hua's eyes could not see through them. Although Yuan was flying in front, his eyes never left Xiao Hua's face. Seeing Xiao Hua frown, he hurriedly smiled and said, Taoist, this is the place where the sea race like me live. This place is filled with seawater brought in by the Feather Spirit Palace. Normally, it is changed every half a year. If it was the place where the ordinary sea race lived, there would not be an unpleasant smell. However, if it was the place where the old sea shrimp lived, because of their injuries, the seawater would inevitably be contaminated with the smell. The seawater that is changed every half a year does not require sea crystals. If you want to change it normally, you need to pay a lot of sea crystals, so... And no harm. Xiao Hua smiled and said, This old man will not smell it. Yes, enlightened master. It's not far ahead. Yuan pointed at a place protected by an origin formation in the distance. In fact, there was no need for Yuan to say anything. Outside the formation, Old Shrimp and the other old members of the Sea Clan were already waiting there. Seeing Xiao Hua coming over, all of them had smiles on their faces. After the old members of the Sea Clan entered the formation, the other old members of the Sea Clan welcomed them. Taoist Xiao, please! Old Sea Shrimp very respectfully invited Xiao Hua to enter the origin formation. In front of Xiao Hua were dozens of old sea creatures with different appearances. Before Xiao Hua even opened his mouth, these old sea creatures all slightly bowed, carefully greeting Xiao Hua with smiling faces. Xiao Hua raised his hand, saluted everyone, and said with a smile, Gentlemen, has General Lu returned? Old Sea Shrimp hastily walked out, raised his claws and said with a smile, Old men don't surround Taoist Xiao. Since Taoist Xiao is already here, he will definitely help us if he can. I still want to let you rest for a while and wait for you to return. All right. As they spoke, the dozens of old sea race members dispersed. However, they didn't go far, and their gazes were fixed on Xiao Hua. Taoist Xiao, this way please! Old Sea Shrimp raised his hand and invited Xiao Hua to walk towards the center of the origin formation. The interior of the origin formation was about a few li in size. It looked like an island with seawater all around. There were some trees on the island, and there was actually a pavilion among the trees. Near the pavilion, there were also some clear and melodious chirping sounds of birds. Xiao Hua flew across the seawater and landed on the island. He looked around and said with a smile, This Yaoshi really lives up to its name. Indeed, Old Sea Shrimp said with a smile. This Yaoshi is a famous place to receive guests in Yuling Bay. Many humans like to rest here. When I came over, a few Confucian cultivators had just left this place. General Lu is very considerate. Xiao Hua understood. So this Yaoshi wasn't what he had imagined. It was the place where Old Sea Shrimp and the other sea creatures lived. Walking into the pavilion, there was a stone table, a few jade chairs, and a few small cups placed on top of the stone table. The cups were filled with some light green liquid, and Xiao Hua couldn't tell what it was. Taoist Xiao, please take a seat. Old Sea Shrimp respectfully invited Xiao Hua to sit down. He raised his hand and picked up a cup and placed it in front of Xiao Hua. This is Yuling Bay's ice rain liquid. It is produced from the ice spring at the bottom of the North Sea. It is said that it is useful for the cultivation of humans. Sigh, Xiao Hua sighed. He took the cup and said, Why are you so polite? Presumably this thing will cost a lot of sea crystals. It is enough for me to know your intentions. Old Sea Shrimp said with a smile. There is a saying in the human race, no one will blame you for being polite. We are all vulgar sea creatures. We don't understand the etiquette of the hidden immortal continent. Normally, we would only learn it after seeing others do it. As long as Taoist doesn't get tired of it, we will be satisfied. Forget it. Xiao Hua raised the cup, raised his head and swallowed the ice rain liquid into his mouth. As the ice rain liquid entered his stomach, an ice-cold yuan qi came out from the ice rain liquid and rushed into Xiao Hua's meridians. At the same time, Xiao Hua's body felt refreshed, as if all the pores on his body were about to open. Not bad, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Ice rain liquid really lives up to its reputation. If Taoist likes it, then use it all. Old Sea Shrimp hurriedly put the other cups in front of Xiaohua. These things are useless to us sea creatures. Xiaohua bitterly smiled. This ice rain liquid was admittedly not bad, but that was only for ordinary cultivators. The amount of yuan qi within this ice rain liquid was simply insignificant to Xiaohua. The only thing that could make Xiaohua praise it was the momentary feeling and nothing more. Looking at Old Sea Shrimp, who was very eager, Xiaohua waved his hand and received the ice rain liquid. He said with a smile, I appreciate your intentions. I have no use for this thing now. Let's talk about it later. Good, good. The Old Sea Shrimp smiled and chatted with Xiaohua for a while. Xiaohua also asked about the Feather Spirit Bay with interest. At this time, Xiaohua knew that the Old Sea Shrimp and the other soldiers of the North Sea Dragon Palace were born in the sea. However, because of the war, they were sent to guard Yuling Bay because of their meritorious service. Yuling Bay was naturally a peaceful place, and there would be no more war. However, after these veterans retired, they could no longer cut through the wind and waves and return to the Northern Sea territory. They could only spend the rest of their lives here. In fact, for these old sea creatures, as long as there was seawater, anywhere was their home. However, they were injured and in pain every day. Usually, it was inevitable that they would think of their former carefree life and miss their former sea. As for Lu, he was just as Xiaohua thought. He was a loyal sea creature general. When he saw that his subordinates' injuries could not be healed and they were howling every day, he took out the sea crystals he had accumulated to treat their injuries. The sea relics in the shop were also killed by him using sea crystals to invite soldiers he was familiar with. As for Old Sea Shrimp and the other sea creatures, they naturally lived in the puddles that Xiaohua saw when he walked over. The fishy smell was emitted by the pus and blood on their bodies. How many sea creatures like you are in Yuling Bay? Xiaohua asked with a frown. At least 100,000. Old Sea Shrimp answered without hesitation. Xiaohua was puzzled and asked curiously, How come there are so many? Then, why do you all have to live in Yuling Bay? Won't you return to the Northern Sea? Old Sea Shrimp smiled bitterly and said, Taoist Xiao, you don't know. However, before he could explain, a sharp voice called out from afar, Taoist Xiao, have you returned? Taoist Xiao, have you returned? Then, a yuan-shen hurriedly swept over and landed on Xiaohua. The voice sounded again. Quick, Taoist Xiao, Lu has encountered trouble in the Flowing Merchant Union. Xiaohua stared blankly. He didn't understand why Lu had encountered trouble in the Flowing Merchant Union, and why Drip was looking for him. However, he didn't hesitate. His figure turned into a rainbow and flew to the sea where the Yuanshan formation was and said, Quick, let's go. On the way, Drip told him what had happened. In fact, it wasn't a big deal. Today, there was a small auction in the Flowing Merchant Union that was similar to the Yazi auction house. After participating, Lu came across a beast skin and bevan that had a pill formula recorded. Coincidentally, the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop also participated in this auction. The Apricot Forest Medicine Shop was determined to get the beast skin and bevan. Of course, Lu wouldn't give in. The two sides started to bid and the beast skin and bevan reached an extremely high price. The Apricot Forest Medicine Shop obviously didn't believe that Lu could take out so many sea crystals. Therefore, they took out their Qiankun bag and asked for the sea crystals immediately after bidding. This was contrary to the auction rules of the Flowing Merchant Union, so the Flowing Merchant Union didn't agree. However, the Flowing Merchant Union reminded Lu that if he couldn't take out so many sea crystals after the auction, not only would the beast skin and bevan belong to the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop, Lu would also have to pay a large amount of sea crystals to the Apricot Forest Medicine Shop. Of course, Lu didn't have so many sea crystals. He hurriedly asked Drip to come back and find Old Sea Shrimp, and the others to raise the sea crystals. Drip was well aware of how many sea crystals Old Sea Shrimp and the other sea tribes had. She knew that these sea tribes definitely wouldn't be able to gather so many sea crystals. Therefore, she went to find Xiaohua as soon as she entered the Yuanshan formation. After all, The human race Dao cultivators who could participate in the Yazi auction house would definitely have sea crystals in their Qiankuan bags. After hearing Drip's explanation, Xiaohua's heart was also relieved. After he asked about the price of the beast's skin and bevin, his heart was completely at ease. He smiled and said, "You don't have to worry about the price. Even if it was 10 times more expensive, this old man can still take it out." That's good, that's good." Drip was actually a little panicked. Now that she heard it, she was really grateful and said, "Taoist master, this matter. Originally, we sea tribes had to deal with it properly, but I didn't expect that Taoist master would have to take out the sea crystals. This one doesn't know what to say." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "My human race has a saying, send Buddha to the Western paradise, send people to their home. Since this old man has the spare energy, this old man will do it alone. But we are monster race." Drip wouldn't say this sentence normally, but facing such a compassionate Taoist master Xiao, Drip admired him from the bottom of her heart, and couldn't help but say it. -13. Chapter 39-47. If the human race doesn't have humanity, then what's the difference between them and beasts? If the demon race has a human heart, then what's the difference between them and the human race? Xiaohua replied with a smile. AI. Drop sighed in shame. Back then, I also devoured a lot of humans. Now that I think about it, lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. As long as you start today. Xiaohua replied indifferently. Dee nodded slightly and pointed to a cave in the stone wall in front of her and said, "Here it is." Xiaohua looked at the cave. It was similar to the Yazi auction house, but the scale was a lot smaller. Even the words, "Continuous Merchant Union," above the cave was a lot inferior. Xiaohua and Drop landed. Drop took out a palm-sized jade tablet and handed it to the demon race guarding the cave, then pointed at Xiaohua and said, "This is the honored guest of my general. He heard that the Continuous Merchant Union has the rare treasure of the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. He was very happy and specially came to take a look." The demon race of the Continuous Merchant Union checked the jade tablet and returned it to Drop, then bowed and said, "Immortal friend, please, not bad." Xiaohua followed Drop into the cave and said with a smile, "The guards of this Continuous Merchant Union are much better than the Yazi auction house. Moreover, they actually let us in during the auction." Hee. Drop covered his mouth and said, "It's just some superficial words. The Continuous Merchant Union already knew that I went out to look for sea crystals. Of course, the Luoyi Merchant Alliance is much better than the Yazi auction. Although the scale is small, they treat all the members of the Sea clan equally." Just as she said this, a voice sounded from inside. "Fellow Immortal, the entire auction is over. I've been waiting for you for the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. The other Immortal friends also accompanied me and waited for you. If you can't take out 100,000 sea crystals, then just say it directly. What are you pretending for? In fact, although I am a human, I am also a person with a reputation in the Yuling Bay. I also know a little about what you are like. It is impossible for you to take out 100,000 sea crystals. For the sake of the Continuous Merchant Union's face, and for the sake of Immortal Friend, I have patiently waited for so long. If we were in the hidden Immortal continent, I would have already become hostile. Sigh, forget it. You probably can't take out 10,000 sea crystals anyway. You might as well take out 5,000. My apricot forest medicine store has been taken care of by the Immortals of the Sea Clan in Yuling Bay, and the Luo Merchant Union has been good to us as well. My apricot forest medicine store will bid for the pill formula and Bay win at the price of 100,000 sea crystals. I. Even though Xinglin Drugstore's words were arrogant, they were reasonable. Lu did not know how to respond. Xiaohua's figure flew into the auction house and laughed brightly. Who said that General Lu doesn't have sea crystals? Oh? Spiritual Master Xiao? Xiaohua's figure still hadn't appeared, but the crowd of sea race and human race in the auction hall all turned their heads in surprise, wanting to see who had arrived. At the same time, a voice that Xiaohua was very familiar with called out in astonishment. Moreover, Xiaohua understood that this voice was definitely not Lu's. When Xiaohua's gaze followed the voice, he couldn't help but be amused. It turned out that the one standing in the middle of the auction wasn't another demon, but the demon clan Xingpa whom Xiaohua had met before. Needless to say, the Luoyi merchant union must be related to Yingpo's clansmen. Xiaohua landed in front of everyone's gaze and looked around the auction hall. This auction hall was only a few hundred feet in size and looked rather simple. There were some demon clan and human race sitting in a few simple origin arrays. However, these humans and demon clan didn't cover their faces. The shock on everyone's faces fell into Xiaohua's eyes. Xiaohua slightly nodded towards Yingpa and walked to Lu's side. He took out a Qianquan pouch from his Taoist robe and handed it to Lu. "General Lu, this is your sea crystal." "All right." Lu took the sea crystal with a grateful expression like Lu's. "Spiritual Master Xiao?" Across from Lu, a handsome Confucian scholar held a folding fan in his hand. He frowned and said, "This one is Zhang Yong of Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan. Greetings to Spiritual Master Xiao. Even though this one doesn't know which province Spiritual Master Xiao is in charge of, even though our Confucian Tao is different, we are all humans. Why is Spiritual Master Xiao helping the sea race? If this matter were to spread to the hidden Immortal continent, Spiritual Master Xiao and Spiritual Master Zhao's country would have a bad reputation, right? Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan?" Xiaohua slightly pondered and immediately realized. Isn't medical Saint Zhang Zhongjing from Yu Province's Nanyang Zhang clan? This Zhang Yong is naturally the descendant of medical saint. Xiaohua hurriedly raised his hand and said, "So it's medical Saint Zhang Zhongjing's descendant. This one has been disrespectful. That's all because of my ancestor's great reputation. My ancestor's medical skills have long been lost in the hands of us juniors. This one is ashamed." Zhang Yong saw that Xiaohua knew his clan's reputation and was slightly proud. He kept his folding fan and cupped his hands. Even though he didn't say anything, his smile already revealed a kind of victory in his hands. He knew that Xiaohua had to give Zhang clan face. "Spiritual Master." Lu also understood and said with a bitter smile, "Since that's the case, there's no need to make things difficult for Spiritual Master. This one doesn't want these things." However, without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Yingpa in the distance smiled and said, "So General Lu is acquainted with Spiritual Master Xiao. Why didn't you say so earlier?" "Sorry, fellow Immortal Zhang, my Luoyi Merchant Alliance won't be bidding for this item." "Ah?" Zhang Yong and all the other humans and demons in the auction house were stunned. Zhang Yong shouted, "Fellow Immortal, if this item wasn't taken out, then it's fine. But now that the auction is over, you're saying that you won't be bidding. Where's the credibility of your Luoyi Merchant Alliance? In the future, who will come to the Luoyi Merchant Alliance to bid for things? Your Luoyi Merchant Alliance can't compare to Yazi Auction House and Jiaxing Lu. With this matter, I'm afraid that in the future, there won't be any humans or even demons coming to the Luoyi Merchant Alliance to bid for things, right? Hee, fellow Immortal, you don't have to be like this." Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand, saying, "This one knows that the auction house should let people take a look at the items before bidding, right? This one hasn't seen this item before. Fellow Immortal, can you let this one take a look?" "Of course." Yingpa originally wanted to give this item to Xiaohua. Hearing Xiaohua's words, he naturally raised his hand and waved the beast skin and Beiwen. The two items landed in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua took the beast skin and Beiwen. When he turned around, the beast skin shook slightly and instantly kept it into the space. He then handed Beiwen to Lu Dao. "General Lu, this one doesn't have any elemental thoughts. I'm afraid I can't take a look." "Take a look." Lu didn't know what Xiaohua was planning to do. After taking Beiwen, he heard Xiaohua's voice transmission. The corner of his eyes twitched a few times. He activated his elemental thoughts and pretended to look at Beiwen. He said, "Where's the beast skin? Let this one take a look again." At this moment, Xiaohua gave the beast skin to Lu and returned Beiwen to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took Bei Wen and kept it into the space. Lu looked at the beast's skin and pondered for a moment. He nodded and said, Taoist Xiao, these two items are indeed what this one wants. Sigh, if it was someone else, then so be it. Xiaohua reached out and took the beast's skin. Bei Wen also appeared in his hand. He then sighed and said, But Yuzhou's Nanyang's Zhang clan is the descendant of the medical saint. This item, it's better to give it to them. Oh. All right. Lu hesitated for a moment and replied, But 5,000 sea crystals? We still have to compensate Xinglin drugstore. Xiaohua said without hesitation. If we didn't interfere, how could Xinglin drugstore spend so many sea crystals? But just for this, we still have to compensate them with 5,000 sea crystals. Yes. Lu replied. He took out 5,000 sea crystals from his Qianquan bracelet. Xiaohua took it and gave it to Zhang Yong along with the beast's skin and Bei Wen. This happiness came too suddenly. Zhang Yong was caught unprepared. But looking at the beast's skin and Bei Wen, Zhang Yong clenched his teeth. Buying these two items for 95,000 sea crystals was indeed not worth it. He originally wanted to take Lu's sea crystals and then bargain with Luoyi Business Alliance. But Xiaohua was so generous that he couldn't open his mouth anymore. Zhang Yong could only take the two items. He took out a Qianquan bag from his bosom and gave it to Yingpa along with the 5,000 sea crystals. He smiled bitterly and said, Taoist friend, here is 75,000 sea crystals. As for the remaining 20,000 sea crystals, when this one returns to Xinglin drugstore, I will immediately send someone to deliver it. Hee, no problem, no problem. Yingpa took the Qianquan bag and said with a smile, This one believes in Xinglin drugstore's reputation. Good. Zhang Yong nodded. He then cupped his hands towards Xiaohua and said, Many thanks, Taoist friend Xiao. If you have time, come to this one Xinglin drugstore. This one will welcome you with open arms. No problem. Xiaohua replied with a smile. If I have time, this one will definitely pay a visit. Fellow Taoists. Yingpa raised his hand and said, This auction ends here. Fellow Taoists, please come again next time. The group of demons and humans all left. Yingpa sealed the entrance of the auction hall. He turned around and bowed. Greetings, Taoist Xiao. Rise. Xiaohua helped Yingpa up and said with a smile, It has been several decades since we parted on Yaopai Mountain. Fellow Taoist, how have you been? It is all thanks to fellow Taoist. Yingpa said with a smile. With fellow Taoist's primeval stones, this one and my clansmen were able to open this Luoyi merchant union. Our lives have been passable. Haha, fellow Taoist's words are becoming more and more like my human race. Xiaohua laughed loudly. Yingpa looked at Lu Heli and said with a smile, Taoist Xiao, can you come with this one for a chat? Of course. Xiaohua nodded. He then said to Lu Heli, You all can go back first. This one will go back in a moment. Yes, Taoist. Lu Heli replied. He took out the Qianquan bag and was about to return it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua said with a smile, This one arbitrarily made you lose 5,000 sea crystals. The primeval stones in the bag can be considered as compensation. Yingpa smiled and took out 5,000 sea crystals from Zhang Yong's Qianquan ring. He handed it to Lu and said, Wool comes from a sheep's back. Fellow Taoist allowed this one to earn 80,000 sea crystals. Take these 5,000 sea crystals as my thanks. This? Lu was at a loss. Beside him, Lu Heli said, Since Taoist Xiao is very close with the Luoyi Merchant Union, you can take it. Thank you, fellow Taoist. Lu took the sea crystals and returned the Qianquan bag to Xiaohua. Xiaohua did not say anything. He took the Qianquan bag and watched as the two sea race flew out of the auction hall. -13. Chapter 39-48. Taoist Master, please! Yingpa raised his hand and invited Xiaohua forward. Xiaohua smiled and said, Don't be so polite with me. You lead the way. Yes. Yingpa smiled faintly and led Xiaohua into the auction field. They arrived at a rather large hall. This hall was similar to what the human race would normally see, but it was filled with large pieces of gravel. Inkpa said to the demon on the side of the hall, "Go and invite the 9 elders here. Tell them that Taoist Master Shao is here." "Taoist Master Shao?" The demon was startled. He looked at Xiaohua with a different gaze and hurriedly left. 9 elders? Xiaohua stepped into the hall and said with a smile, "Are they the elders of your clan?" Inkpa nodded and said, "Yes." Then, Inkpa took out a jade chair from the heaven and earth ring and placed it on the side of the stone. He raised his hand and said, "Taoist Master, please sit." "Okay." Xiaohua knew that this was the place where the human race's honored guests sat, so he sat down without hesitation. He then looked at Inkpa sitting on the main seat next to him. Xiaohua suddenly woke up and cupped his hands. "Oh, congratulations, Taoist Master! You are now the head of a clan? Taoist Master Shao, you must be joking." Inkpa smiled. "My clan is a small clan in the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realm. Being the head of a clan is nothing. Moreover, my position as the head of a clan is related to Taoist Master Shao." "Oh? Could it be?" Xiaohua already understood. Inkpa explained, "Taoist Master Shao is right. It is because I made a few transactions with Taoist Master and Black Wind Mountain Range. My clan's head just happened to be in trouble, so I stood out." "Haha, Taoist Master Shao is prepared and has the ability to seize opportunities," Xiaohua said with a smile. "This has nothing to do with me." Inkpa smiled and took out some rare fruits from the heaven and earth ring for Xiaohua to taste. After a while he probed. "Taoist Master Shao, after making a few transactions with Black Wind Mountain Range, when I was preparing to go there, I received the news that Black Wind Mountain Range was being attacked by Immortal Palace. I also heard Taoist Master Zhao's fame of defeating Immortal Palace. I am very worried for Taoist Master Shao. I even secretly went to see Black Wind Mountain Range. That place is completely different from before. But I really didn't expect that Taoist Master Shao would suddenly come to Yiling Bay today." "It's nothing," Xiaohua said with a smile. "I had an appointment with a fellow Taoist, so I came here, but I didn't run into him. Therefore, this Shao is preparing to return." Xiaohua roughly explained everything that he could say. In the end, he smiled and said, "If I didn't see it with my own eyes, how could I have thought that the Luoyi Merchant Union was actually fellow immortals? Hee, it seems like fellow immortal is fated to follow me. Otherwise, why would you still come to my Luo Merchant Alliance after several rejections?" Inkpa laughed and said, "If fellow immortal wants any Baywin, elixirs, or pill formulas, I can ask my clansmen to find them." When he heard up to here, Xiaohua had an idea in his heart, and he probed. "Fellow immortal, I'll ask you something." "Please go ahead, fellow immortal," Inkpa replied with a smile. "Earlier you said that you obtained information about the Black Wind Mountain Range," Xiaohua said in a low voice. "So your Luo Merchant Union has a certain source of information in the hidden immortal continent?" "Of course," Inkpa nodded. "For Jai Xing Lu, Li Lai Trading Company, and my Luo Merchant Union, information is sometimes like sea crystals. Only by having a source of information all over the hidden immortal continent can we find business opportunities. However, my Luo Merchant Union has only been established for a short period of time, and we haven't done enough in this aspect. A lot of information is bought with vitality stones. So it's like this." Xiaohua pinched his chin, and his mind spun rapidly. Then, he said something shocking. "Fellow immortal, if this Shao manages this Luo Merchant Union with you, will your Luo Merchant Union be able to develop very quickly?" "Ah? What did fellow immortal say?" Inkpa was shocked, and he didn't know how to answer. After a moment, Inkpa said with a bitter smile, "Fellow immortal Shao, this Shao knows that your cultivation is profound, and there are also a lot of vitality stones in your Qiankun bag. However, not to mention that for my Luo Merchant Union to develop, the amount of vitality stones that fellow immortal thinks is far beyond what fellow immortal thinks. This Shao doesn't think that fellow immortal can take it out. If fellow Immortal wants to cooperate with my Luoyi merchant union with just these vitality stones, I'm afraid it's impossible. Of course, Xiaohua said with a smile. This Luoyi merchant union belongs to fellow Immortal and your clansmen. This Xiao definitely doesn't have any covetous thoughts. This Xiao just wants to cooperate with fellow Immortal and be able to obtain information about the hidden Immortal continent from your Luoyi merchant union. And even information about the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the Western Paradise. Fellow Immortal, you think too highly of this Xiao. Inkta didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How far does my Luoyi merchant union have to develop to be able to provide so much information for fellow Immortal Xiao? Why not? Xiaohua said with a smile. As long as the Luoyi merchant union cooperates with this Xiao will let you broaden your horizons. How is that possible? If Xiaohua wasn't Ingpo's benefactor, Ingpo would have already driven him away. How could a Taoist cultivator know the twists and turns of running a merchant union? Even if he could defeat perfected Lord Qingyuan. However, before Ingpo could say anything else, 9 demon clan members who looked similar to Ingpo came in from the outside. Ingpo stood up and introduced with a smile. Elders, this is the Taoist Master Xiao that I mentioned to the elders earlier. If it wasn't for his help, I'm afraid it wouldn't be so easy for us to establish the merchant union. Since Taoist Master Xiao has come to visit, I invite the elders to come and meet him. The 9 elders were different from Ingpa. Some of them looked enthusiastic, while some looked cold. However, Xiaohua didn't care. One by one, he returned the greeting. His etiquette was very considerate. However, seeing that the 9 elders of the Ingpa clan were all in Yuling Bay, Xiaohua was a little surprised. Elders, please take a seat. Ingpa sat down first and said to the 9 elders. The 9 elders sat on different pieces of gravel. Rather than saying that they were sitting, it was better to say that they were lying down. They looked very comfortable. Ingpa looked at Xiaohua, thought for a moment, and said, Elders, Taoist Master Xiao has done a favor for our clan. He came to find me today because he has something important to discuss with me. Since all the elders are here, I would like to hear your opinions. With that, Ingpa told them that Xiaohua wanted to cooperate with the Merchant Union and obtained information from the Merchant Union. An elder waited for Ingpa to finish speaking, then waved his hand and said, Although Taoist Master Xiao has done a favor for our clan, this Merchant Union belongs to our clan. When we established it, we didn't plan to cooperate with anyone. Besides, our clan no longer has a place to stand in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. This Merchant Union is our clan's last hope. The human clan has a saying, how can we allow others to sleep beside our bed? I don't think it's appropriate. That's right. If Taoist Master Xiao wants information, he can exchange it with primordial stones. Why do we have to cooperate? Humans are humans. It's hard to get rid of their greedy hearts. Originally, they wanted to make a deal with our clan, but now that they see our merchant union prospering, they want to interfere. In the end, they want to swallow the entire merchant union for themselves. This kind of thing I've seen many times. Xiaohua smiled but didn't say anything. After all, what the elders said was true. Everyone had their own thoughts, not to mention the difference between the human race and the Yao race. It was normal for these Yao race that he had never met before to doubt him. He. Ingpa smiled and said to Xiaohua, Fellow Taoist, as you can see, although I'm the clan leader, many things need to be unanimously decided by the elders. I've already told you about this situation before. Xiaohua stood up, raised his hand, and took out a universe bracelet. He casually handed it to an elder beside him and said, Fellow Taoist, take a look at this first, then you can make a decision later. This is... That elder was a bit hesitant. He looked at Ingpa and the other demons, but still took it. Xiaohua continued. This Xiao knows that fellow Taoists have misgivings. After all, this is the first time we've met. Moreover, although Ingpa trusts this Xiao, after all, he represents the interests of the clan. There are many things. Just as Xiaohua was speaking, the clan leader of the demon clan cried out in alarm, his face showing an inconceivable expression. He! Xiaohua wasn't surprised and continued. Ingpa has many things to consider from the clan's interests. He can't make decisions on his own. This old man hasn't seen Ingpa much, but I know that he's a genius in business. However, what he lacks is the conditions to make the merchant union bigger. This Xiao has never been interested in the merchant union. My hope for the merchant union is some information. Of course, if you want to buy information, you can, but how can it be as efficient as controlling the information yourself? This Xiao is different from Ingpa. This Xiao has no interest in managing the merchant union, but this Xiao has the means to expand the merchant union. When the two are combined, it's a win-win situation. At this moment, the yin-yang bracelet in the hands of the clan leader of the demon clan had already been passed to two elders. The two elders were also extremely surprised, but fortunately, they didn't cry out in alarm. Seeing this, Ingpa was also somewhat surprised. His gaze fell on the yin-yang bracelet, and he seemed to be lost in thought. Ingpa, take a look at this. As he spoke, Xiaohua took out another yin-yang bracelet and passed it to Ingpa. Ingpa took it and scanned it with his origin force. He couldn't help but cry out again. What? Then, Ingpa realized that he had lost his composure. He looked at Xiaohua and passed the yin-yang bracelet to an elder beside him. Ingpa, this Xiao has more than this, Xiaohua said with a smile. Moreover, this Xiao will continuously provide these things to the merchant union. Do you think this Xiao has the capital to cooperate with the merchant union? This? Ingpa was somewhat hesitant. Xiaohua struck while the iron was hot. He took out a jade bottle and passed it to Ingpa. Take a look at this. What is this? Ingpa took the jade bottle and looked at it. He was somewhat puzzled and asked curiously. This bitter, what is this? Medicine. Xiaohua pointed with his hand and said, This is the medicine of the water clan controlled by the Apricot Forest Medicine Store. This Xiao already had the bevan from before. This shall refine some of it myself. The raw materials are all from the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the North Sea. -13. Chapter 39-49. Hearing this, Ingbo couldn't help but stand up. Previously, Xiaohua's Heaven and Earth bracelet only contained some magic tools and other things. Although Ingbo was surprised, it was not enough to shock him. However, the medicine that Xiaohua took out made Ingbo unable to sit still. He clearly knew the status of the Apricot Forest medicine shop in the Yuling Bay. Since Xiaohua could take out this kind of medicine, he could naturally take out other things. Don't worry. Xiaohua decided to say something shocking. He raised his hand and took out another Heaven and Earth bracelet and handed it to Ingbo. He said, Fellow Immortal, take a look at this. What is this? Ingbo didn't wait for the Heaven and Earth bracelet to fly over. He walked over and took the Heaven and Earth bracelet from the air. He checked it with his primordial thought and said in surprise, This is just a grain for the human race? What's the use of it? Hee, Xiaohua said with a smile. Perhaps you demons don't need this grain, but what about the hidden immortal continent and the pure land? If the merchant union wants to gain a foothold in these two places, which Confucian cultivator or Buddhist disciple would dare to go against the merchant union when you take out these things that are related to the people's livelihood? Ingbo and other demons naturally don't need this grain. They couldn't figure out the importance of it. However, after hearing Xiaohua's words, they immediately understood. Ingbo even said with a smile, Not just the two continents of the human race, even in my Thousand Demons Sacred Realm, there are still many demons who need this grain. But the problem is... Ingbo was a little hesitant. Fellow Immortal, you can only take out these, a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Hee. Xiaohua laughed. Don't forget about the disciples of my Black Wind Mountain. Where did they go? Ingbo patted his forehead and said with a smile, Daoist Xiao is really far-sighted. I seem to understand a little. Now, I'm afraid the number of disciples of my Black Wind Mountain is more than 10 times what you saw that day, Xiaohua said with a smile. Besides, with my reputation now, recruiting some Taoist cultivators, is not a difficult thing. These spiritual herbs, magic tools, and grain can be endlessly given to me. Actually, my Taoist cultivators in the hidden immortal continent ostracized us. Otherwise, why would I cooperate with the merchant union? Sigh, not bad. Ingpa finally understood Xiaohua's thoughts. He raised his head and looked at the elders who had already seen the universe bracelets. Then, he passed the medicine to them. This medicine, Xiaohua chuckled. To tell you the truth, if the continuous merchant union can find more demon herbs, demon fruits, and other things, I can still let the disciples of the Black Wind Ridge refine even more. There's no need to talk about the seeds, but the medicine should be enough to make the name of the trade union known throughout the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Immortal's condition, Ingpa said with a bitter smile. I really can't refuse. The 9 elders looked through the items in the universal bracelet, and their eyes revealed a rare look of greed. Unfortunately, they couldn't see through Xiaohua's strength. Moreover, they knew that Xiaohua had defeated perfected Lord Qingyuan. Who would dare to have any evil thoughts? Elders, what do you think? Ingpa asked. The group of elders looked at the universal bracelet in Ingpo's hands. They looked at each other for a moment and said, Immortal Xiao is an old friend of the clan leader. This matter, let the clan leader decide for himself. Immortal friends, Xiaohua hurriedly said. When I talked to Ingpa earlier, I didn't plan to take out so many things. Therefore, I only planned to cooperate with the continuous merchant union to obtain information. Now that I've made it clear, I'm sure all the elders can see that the things I took out, not to mention the Prophet Merchant Union, even Star Picking Tower, is willing to cooperate with me. Therefore, my cooperation with the continuous merchant union may have to deepen a bit. Immortal Xiao, do you mean that the Black Wind Ridge will cooperate with the continuous merchant union? Ingpa understood something and asked. Xiaohua nodded. Yes, you're right. My Black Wind Ridge provides the continuous merchant union with an endless supply of things. Naturally, my Black Wind Ridge will get something in return. This is different from the cooperation between me and the Luoyi Business Alliance. Ingpa thought for a moment and said, It's possible to cooperate with the Dao sect. However, this matter is of great importance. I can't decide on my own. I need to discuss it with the elders. Immortal Xiao, please wait a moment. Well said. Xiaohua sat down and said, You wait for the discussion. Bring me some demon herbs and demon fruits. Hee, no problem. Seeing Xiaohua's current appearance, Ingpa knew that he was very confident in this cooperation. He answered and called the demon race on guard outside. He then left with the group of elders. Xiaohua asked the demon race on guard for some demon fruits and some special aquatic plants in the North Sea. Then, he waved his hands and created waves of water. The water melted the aquatic plants and demon fruits one by one like flames. Then, Xiaohua used the water dissolution technique to start refining medicine in the hall. Seeing Xiaohua's miraculous skills, the demon race on guard was dumbstruck. Xiaohua's Qi technique had long been perfected to the point of perfection. Refining a simple medicine was a piece of cake for him. In just a short moment, Xiaohua had finished refining the medicine. Seeing that Bo and the other members of the demon clan had yet to return, he simply continued to refine. Only after he had refined more than 10 medicines did Bo return to the hall. However, the 9 elders did not follow him, and the universe bangles were no longer in Bo's hands. Hee. Xiaohua naturally understood. He waved his hand and the water disappeared. He asked, Fellow Immortal, have you made a decision? Alas, Immortal Xiaohua's things are really good. The conditions are also very generous. My inferior clansmen have no choice but to agree. Ingpa smiled bitterly and said, However, the elders also made it clear that this continuous merchant union is the last hope of my clan. They don't want Immortal Xiaohua to control it. Alas, what kind of worry is this? Xiaohua waved his hand and said, This Xiao will definitely not. Moreover, this Xiao also guarantees that my Black Wind Ridge will not interfere in the development of the continuous merchant union. This Xiao and my Black Wind Ridge's development will only be in the cultivation of Taoism. If that's the case, this one agrees to cooperate with the Black Wind Ridge on behalf of my clansmen. Ingpa raised his claws and said solemnly, "The Continuous Merchant Union can give Black Wind Ridge 70% of the profits from the items of the Black Wind Ridge. As for the information that Black Wind Ridge needs, our Continuous Merchant Union will unconditionally provide it. Immortal Shao, as an ally of our Continuous Merchant Union, not only will our Continuous Merchant Union provide Immortal Shao with the things that he needs first, our Continuous Merchant Union can also give Immortal Shao 10% of the profits every year. Of course, the condition is that whenever our Continuous Merchant Union needs Immortal Xiaohua must act at any time." "Oh? You still want this one to act?" Xiaohua was somewhat surprised by the last condition. Ingpa smiled bitterly and said, "The Continuous Merchant Union is the hope of my clan. However, my clan no longer has a place in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Therefore, this one has been thinking about finding a backer. Previously, this one did not feel that Immortal Xiaohua was very powerful. However, since Immortal Xiaohua was able to defeat Immortal Qin Yuan, your future prospects are limitless. If this one does not establish a good relationship with Immortal Xiaohua, when should I wait? Of course, if Immortal Xiao feels that 10% is not much, this one can give Immortal Xiao 5% of my profits. That's not necessary. This one just feels that as a Taoist cultivator, I will inevitably have some conflicts with Confucian cultivators in the future. I'm afraid that I will implicate the Continuous Merchant Union in the future. Immortal Shao doesn't need to worry about this. The Demon Clan's business in the hidden Immortal Continent and Western Land of Ultimate Bliss is already filled with difficulties. Immortal Shao doesn't matter if you are a Taoist cultivator or a Confucian cultivator, as long as your strength is outstanding." Xiaohua was overjoyed and was about to agree. However, his heart moved and he said, "Also, the food seeds, medicine and other things, you need to say that they are provided by Immortal Shao. If possible, there is no need for any sea crystals or primeval stones. This is naturally possible." Ingpa nodded. "There are also many poor demon clans in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. They may not have any primeval stones to give to Immortal Shao." "Good." Xiaohua raised his hand and patted Ingpa's claws. "This is considered a formal alliance. Many thanks to Immortal Shao for giving my Continuous Merchant Union another chance." Ingpa knew that Xiaohua was a man of his words and his heart was set. He smiled and took out a flat bone piece from his bosom and handed it to Xiaohua. "This is Immortal Zhao's keepsake. With this keepsake, Immortal Shao can exercise authority in the Continuous Merchant Union that is second only to me and the 9 elders." "Haha, good." Xiaohua took the bone piece and looked at it. There was a strange demon beast engraved on it. It was actually similar to a low-level demon beast in the Legacy world. Xiaohua took the bone piece and said, "Since this one is an ally of the Continuous Merchant Union, you should bring some more universe bracelets over." This time, this one came out with something. If it wasn't for meeting fellow Immortal, perhaps the Lin Lai Trading Company would have benefited. "Good." Ingpa hurriedly ordered the demon clan guarding outside to take the universe bracelets. However, he said in a low voice, "Immortal Shao, when this one came in, Immortal Shao was refining medicine?" "Yes." Xiaohua nodded. "That's what this one promised Lu Hedi. Actually, there are many old Sea Clan members in this Yuling Bay. You should bring enough demon fruits and seaweed. This one will refine a batch for you first." "This is naturally possible," Ingpa said somewhat embarrassedly. "But what this one means is, this refining technique, can Immortal Xiaohua teach this one's clansmen?" Hearing this, Xiaohua immediately came to a realization. He nodded and said, "Of course. You and I are now in a cooperative relationship. This one naturally can teach your clansmen what this one knows." Immortal Xiaohua. Ingpa was almost about to cry. Just now, there was an elder who said that Immortal Xiaohua had bad intentions. This one, as the patriarch, rejected it. Now, it seems that elder was really measuring the heart of a gentleman with his own mean measure. My human clan has a saying, distance tests a horse's strength, and time reveals a person's heart. In the future, it will be fine after a long time. Xiaohua said indifferently. You should find a few, or call all the clansmen who have some experience in refining medicine. This one is now thinking of how to teach them the refining technique. Okay, this one will do it right away. Ingpa couldn't even close his mouth. He hurriedly ran out by himself. He didn't even call the demon clan member on duty. Xiaohua sat back in his chair. In his mind, he was thinking of how to teach the demon clan how to refine medicine. -13. Chapter 3950. Not long after, Ingpa actually brought in 30 or so demons, and even an elder came along. Greetings, Master Xiao! The 30 or so demons obviously received Ingpa's orders, and saluted respectfully as soon as they came in. Master Xiao? Xiaohua smiled, and raised his hand. And get up, then this Xiao will be your master for once. Thank you, Master Xiao. The demons happily stood up. Xiaohua raised his hand, and a green light flashed in the entire hall, and 30 or so green crystal threads entered between the eyebrows of the demons. In just a few breaths, all of the demons had painful expressions on their faces. Xiaohua withdrew his soul technique, and said indifferently, all of you carefully recall and comprehend. After an hour, you should be able to remember half of what the demons left behind. Yes, this disciple understands. The 30 or so demons all answered, then closed their eyes and carefully memorized. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Xiaohua waved his hand and said, Ingpa, come over here. Yes, master. At this moment, Ingpa prostrated himself in admiration of Xiaohua, and hurriedly walked over. Are the universe bangles ready? Here. Ingpa took out a dozen or so universe bangles. And it's almost enough. Xiaohua held a universe bag in his left hand, and a universe bag in his right hand. In just a short moment, Ingpa's dozen or so universe bangles were all filled, and he said with a smile, This is the first time my Black Wind Ridge cooperated with the Luoyi Merchant Union, and I'm quite sincere. In the future, I'm afraid we'll have a long relationship. Ingpa was so excited that his face turned pale. Although there were many things, but it was enough to take his life. When he was bidding, he still had to consider the safety of the Luoyi Merchant Union, and it was really not easy. Ingpa took out a universe bangle and handed it to the elder who followed him, and said in a low voice, This universe bangle and the previous ones, you all discuss how to bid, do not attract the attention of other experts. And this old man knows. This elder could be considered to be completely at ease with Xiaohua, and he cupped his hands towards Xiaohua and Ingpa, then hurriedly left. After the elder left, Xiaohua asked again, Ingpa, what good things does the Luoyi Merchant Union have now? I'll let master know. Ingpa shook his head and said, Previously I had prepared some things for you. However, when I heard that the Black Wind Ridge was gone, I bid for those things. However, if Taoist master needs anything, feel free to tell me and I'll have my clansmen search for it. Some news, Xiaohua said in a low voice. News about metal and wood magnetism, metal and earth magnetism, wood and water magnetism. Also, where can I find the extreme magnetic ray? Ingpa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Taoist master, these. I'm afraid that our clansmen won't be able to find them. I'll help you take a look elsewhere. All right, thank you, fellow immortal. Xiaohua understood the difficulty of this information and nodded. As long as we can find it, the time doesn't matter. There's also a universe bracelet here. Ingpa took out another one from his bosom and smiled. I just took this from the storage area. It's filled with demon fruits, demon herbs, seaweed, sea wood, and other ordinary items of the Thousand Demons sacred realm. These should be able to be refined into medicine. All right, this old man understands. Xiaohua took the universe bracelet and said, This old man will do his best to refine it. Throwing the universe bracelet to Green Robe, Xiaohua asked with a smile, Fellow immortal, what other good things do you have here? Ingpa shook his head and said, The Luoyi Merchant Union just held an auction. There aren't many things left. I reckon that they won't be able to enter Taoist Master's eyes. If Taoist Master wants to find something, Jai Xinglu's auction is in 3 days. This one can accompany fellow Immortal to take a look. There's an auction? Xiaohua smiled and said, the day before yesterday it was Yazi Auction House, now it's Luoyi Merchant Union, 3 days later it's Jai Xinglu's. Then Lilai Trading Company will also have one in the near future, right? That's right. Ingpa nodded and said, in Yuling Bay, only our 4 clans are qualified to hold auctions. We usually arrange our own auctions according to Yazi Auction House's auctions, most of which are held recently. Tomorrow should be Lilai Trading Company's, but Soul Scholars' items are mostly from the human race, and most of them are from Confucian cultivators. This one also went to participate, and I reckon that it's somewhat different from fellow Immortal's expectations. Therefore, this one suggests fellow Immortal to participate in Jai Xinglu's auction 3 days later. Their items are not inferior to Yazi auction houses, and are usually placed at the end, which is the so-called finale of the human race. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, since the Luo Chamber of Commerce has some relationship with the Lilai Trading Company, you might as well send one of your subordinates over to ask what the Lilai Trading Company has prepared for this auction. If this Xiao has any intentions, this Xiao can go over and take a look. That's right. Ingpa nodded and said, Taoist Master is right. In every auction, if there isn't a special reason, we will make the items to be auctioned public. This one will send my clansman over to inquire. Not to mention that Ingpa sent his clansman to Lilai Trading Company to inquire. Just these 30 or so clansmen of Ingpa slowly woke up after a full hour. Xiaohua originally had some expectations, thinking that the longer they comprehended, the more they would be able to remember. However, after asking, he was very disappointed. Most of them had forgotten 80% of the simple water fusion technique, and only 4 clansmen of the demon race had remembered 30%. It seems that the inheritance of the demon race really emphasizes bloodline, Xiaohua thought to himself. It's completely different from my human race. This water fusion technique is not too complicated. As long as the cultivators of my human race put in the effort, even if they can't be outstanding, they can at least comprehend the majority of it by analogy. Waving his hand to let the 20 or so clansmen of the demon race leave, Xiaohua said to Ingpa standing next to him, Ingpa, it seems that only these 4 clansmen can try to refine the medicine. Not only was Ingpa not disappointed, but his eyes were also abnormally fanatical, and he couldn't suppress the joy in his mouth as he said, Thank you, Taoist Master. If it weren't for Taoist Master's secret technique, how could my clansmen master the Taoist cultivation method? In the future, if my clan can prosper, I will have to thank Taoist Master Xiao. Oh! Seeing this, Xiaohua was enlightened again. He wasn't a demon, so his thoughts were different from the demon race. However, he forgot that as long as he taught these 4 clansmen of the water fusion technique, and these 4 clansmen of the demon race passed it on in the clan, perhaps in another 1,000 or 10,000 years, this water fusion technique would be integrated into the bloodline of Ingpo's clan. Ingpa and the other clansmen of the demon race in the future might be born with the water fusion technique. No wonder Ingpa shed tears of gratitude. Thinking of this, an inconceivable thought appeared in his mind. Damn it, this Xiao knows so many secret techniques of the demon race, and has obtained the bloodline of the absolute saint. Then, this Zhao's descendants, what kind of situation will they be? This thought naturally flashed through Xiaohua's mind, but how could Xiaohua know? The hand of karma in his space was gradually taking shape, so how could all these thoughts appear out of thin air? Many of them were related to the karma of the river of karma. What he occasionally thought of might just be a small wave in the river of karma. Afterwards, Xiaohua asked the 4 clansmen of the demon race about their comprehension, and gave them detailed instructions on how to use their demon power to perform the water fusion technique. Furthermore, in front of these 4 clansmen of the demon race, he refined the medicine again and again. Unfortunately, although the 4 clansmen of the demon race already understood how to control their demon power, no matter what, they couldn't display their demon power properly. This made Xiaohua very depressed. When did he have to be so patient when teaching his disciples? Fu Jiwen, Lu Yi, and the others, which one of them didn't immediately understand when he casually mentioned it? Even Black Bear, White Lion, and Golden Eagle only had a single soul technique to teach them the cultivation method. How could these 4 wooden clansmen of the demon race compare? However, it was good that Xiaohua needed to refine medicine for Bromine and the other old members of the sea race, so he simply patiently refined it again and again. After 3 days, Xiaohua gave the refined medicine to Ingpa, and had him find a clansman to give it to Lu. He then looked at the demon race who were still frantically practicing the water fusion technique and said, "This old man's teachings end here. As for how to practice in the future, it will be up to you. In the secret techniques this old man left you, there is also a method to use a pill furnace to refine medicine. When you find a pill furnace in the future, you can try it yourself. That way, it might be much easier than now. You don't have to be too radical now. Reverend, rest assured, this one has already sent clansmen to look for it. The human pill furnace may not be easy to use, but our demon race should have something similar." Ingpa smiled at the side and said, "Now, I will accompany Reverend to Zhai Xinglu." "Many thanks, Master Xiao." The 4 clansmen bowed and thanked this unfathomable Master Xiao with heartfelt admiration. Xiaohua waved his hand, indicating the 4 to continue practicing. He then followed Ingpa out of the Luoyi Merchant Union. As soon as he went out, he saw a sea beast holding a conch-like carriage waiting there. Xiaohua smiled. It's still better to have sea crystals. Previously, when I followed Lu and Di, I had to rely on myself to fly. In the middle of the journey, I was interrogated by the sea race of the Feather Spirit Palace. Now that we are riding a sea carriage, there shouldn't be so many trifles, right? Reverend, please. Ingpa invited Xiaohua into the sea carriage and said with a smile, "Reverend, these few days in Yuling Bay are different from the past. The Feather Spirit Palace caused a mess in Yuling Bay because of the matter of the Yazi Arena. Normally, there are also many sea carriages. Even if you don't ride a sea carriage, you won't be interrogated." Xiaohua's heart moved, and he asked again, "This Xiao also knows about these matters, I just don't know. Has the North Sea Dragon Palace found the Confucian cultivator that caused trouble? Has the monster that escaped been caught?" According to reliable information, the North Sea Dragon Palace has already sent dragon generals more than 10,000 li deep into the hidden Immortal continent, but they still haven't found any traces of the Confucian cultivator. Ingpa replied, "If the Confucian cultivator can't be found, then of course there's no news about the monster that escaped." "Oh," Xiaohua casually responded, but his heart was slightly bewildered. Damn it, could it be that Jiangxing was eaten by those leopards? But whether they were eaten or not, what does it have to do with this Xiao? After the time it took to eat a meal, the sound of wind gradually appeared outside the window. The sound of the wind was getting louder and louder. Not only was there a mournful sound, even the sea carriage was slightly shaking. Ingpa looked at the gloomy sky outside the window and said with a smile, "It's rare that there's no tsunami wind these few days. Today, it's starting to blow again. This time, it will blow for several days." -13. Chapter 39:51. Xiaohua nodded when he saw how powerful the sea breeze was. The winds and clouds above the North Sea are unpredictable. No one knows when a tsunami will appear. Yuling Bay is right by the sea. Naturally, it will be the first to be affected. As he spoke, Xiaohua looked outside. Whether it was the Yi residence or the Yi shop, they were all glowing. It was obvious that the demon array of Yuling Bay was slowly activating to resist the strong sea breeze. As Xiaohua and Ingpa were talking, the sea carriage actually flew up again towards the foot of the mountain. "I'll." Xiaohua looked up and saw a few majestic palaces standing at the foot of the mountain. Amidst the raging sea breeze, wisps of light appeared around the palaces. Xiaohua couldn't help but ask in astonishment, "Could Zhai Xinglu be in one of these palaces? Damn it, I always thought that this was Yuling Palace's place." Yuling Palace is filled with the water clan of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Although they can leave the water, they still like to stay in the water. Yuling Palace is built underground in the mountain and is connected to the North Sea. They will not build their palaces on the mountain. Ingpa smiled. Only Jai Xinglu is wealthy enough to challenge the North Sea Dragon Palace and build palaces on the foot of the mountain. Xiaohua frowned and narrowed his eyes. He looked at the approaching palaces and asked curiously, "Is Jai Xinglu so powerful? They can actually challenge the North Sea Dragon Palace? How powerful is Jai Xinglu?" This is a question that I considered when I first formed the Continuous Merchant Alliance. Then I started to gather information to find the answer. But, even now, I do not know the answer to this question. Actually, there is no need to think too much. Look at Yuling Bay. All the powers rely on the North Sea Dragon Palace. Only Jai Xinglu has built palaces on the mountain. This is enough to show how powerful Jai Xinglu is, Ingpa said with some fascination. Xiaohua smiled. He had not expected that Jai Xinglu, whom he had met in the Bronze Pillar country, would actually be so powerful. It looked like he would have to re-evaluate the words of Zhu Qing. However, thinking about it from another perspective, Duan Muqing and Murong Songyun, who were both secondary first-rank aristocratic families, were well-behaved in Jai Xinglu. Even the East Sea Dragon Palace's patrol envoy was well-behaved. Presumably, Jai Xinglu would not be as unbearable as Xiaohua had previously thought, right? Woo! A huge gust of sea wind swept over, and the entire carriage finally couldn't withstand it. It spun in the air and crashed towards the mountain peak. Xiaohua's figure flashed and appeared in midair. With a shake of his big sleeves, he covered the sea chariot. After that, Xiaohua transformed into a rainbow and landed on the ground. Looking at Ingpa, who was unable to fly out of the sea chariot in time, he said with a smile, "The sea breeze is so strong, you don't need to accompany this Xiao to the auction. You can go back first." Ingpa pondered for a moment and nodded. "The sea breeze is indeed too strong. There won't be too many monsters participating in the auction. My strength is too weak, and I might delay the auction. It's better for me to turn back." Then Ingpa reminded him again. "The token of the Continuous Merchant Union in Jai Xinglu's hands should be useful in Jai Xinglu. Don't forget to take it out when you enter." Hee, this old man knows. "You can go back now." Xiaohua smiled and transformed into a rainbow again. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived near the palace. Seeing Xiaohua's figure disappear, Ingpa took a deep breath and muttered, "Jai Xinglu, I hope you won't disappoint this one." In order to pull Jai Xinglu into the Merchant Union, this one had a falling out with the 9 elders. The affairs of the world were very strange. Many accidental factors were often more decisive than certain factors. If the Continuous Merchant Union had developed normally, with the efforts of Ingpa and the elders of the clan, it might have been able to develop. However, this development was filled with hardships. Every day, countless merchant unions and trading companies appeared in the 3 continents. Every day, countless merchant unions and trading companies closed down. Perhaps, this kind of continuous merchant union would disappear one day. However, they had met Xiaohua. Who had come to Yuling Bay to look for Ao Zhantian. This mere chance encounter had completely changed the fate of the Continuous Merchant Union. Perhaps many years later, when Ingpa and the 9 elders thought about this seemingly hasty decision, they would be very glad that they had seized this one and only opportunity. Xiaohua didn't think as much as Ingpa. His figure was flying in the air, and he had already seen clearly that in front of the palace, there was a pavilion that was dozens of feet tall. On the pavilion, there was a signboard that was about 10 feet tall, with the words, "Jai Xinglu," written on it. These 3 words looked exactly the same as the ones Xiaohua had seen in the Bronze Pillar Nation. They were written by the same person. However, Xiaohua didn't dare to underestimate them now. And when Xiaohua withdrew his contempt, those 3 big words looked extremely wonderful again. It was far from having the aura of the secular world that it had in the past. Damn it! Xiaohua looked at it for a moment, then withdrew his gaze and smiled bitterly. Are the words good, or is this Zhao's heart dirty? Along with Xiaohua's figure appearing in front of the pavilion, a respectful voice sounded out from within. "Greetings, senior." Then, a light pillar that was like a ladder stretched out from the pavilion, and a young man in plain clothes walked out from within. He respectfully saluted and said, "Senior, have you come to participate in the auction?" "Yes." Xiaohua stood in the air. Although there was no light around him, the sea breeze didn't even lift a corner of Xiaohua's Taoist robe. "Senior, please." The young man took a few steps forward, and the light pillar also extended and covered Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't need to use his magic power, and the light pillar brought Xiaohua into the pavilion. The interior of the pavilion was similar to the Jai Xinglu in the Bronze Pillar Nation. It was a huge open space, and the ground looked like a huge glass. Xiaohua could clearly see the low vegetation on the mountain peak swaying helplessly in the sea breeze. On both sides of the open space, there were already some dragon horse carriages. There were also some sea beasts lying obediently on the ground. Several tall sea race people were holding strange weapons in their hands, guarding these carriages. After the open space, there was a huge palace. Behind this palace, there were also many interconnected palaces. It was much larger than the Jai Xinglu in the Bronze Pillar Nation. At this moment, the palace's doors were wide open, and more than 10 men in plain clothes stood there in an orderly manner. They all had smiles on their faces. "Senior, this way please." The young man was well trained. He waited for Xiaohua to pause for a moment, and clearly see the situation around him. Then he raised his hand and said respectfully, "And?" Xiaohua nodded and followed the young man to the front of the palace. The 10 men respectfully bowed at the same time and said in unison, "Greetings, senior." "Rise." Xiaohua nodded and walked closer to the Jai Xinglu. After entering the Jai Xinglu twice, Xiaohua was no longer the unknown Taoist cultivator of the past. Sure enough, as Xiaohua had expected, the moment he entered Jai Xinglu, he was faced with the same screen. Xiaohua had originally wanted to pass by it, but after taking 2 steps, he stopped and turned to the man behind him. "What's your number?" The man was stunned, then he smiled and said, "Senior, I'm here to welcome guests. I don't have a number." "Oh." Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, "In that case, you don't know anything about this screen?" "Screen?" The man was stunned, then his expression immediately changed to one of respect. He said, "Senior, since you know about the screen of my Jai Xinglu, you are naturally my Jai Xinglu's distinguished guest. Senior, please wait a moment. I'll ask the chief steward to come over." "Okay." Xiaohua thought for a moment, and simply stood there without moving. The man didn't dare to leave. He took out a jade slip and flicked it. The jade slip flew out soundlessly. He then said to Xiaohua, "Senior, please wait a moment. My chief steward will come over immediately." In just a few breaths, a beautiful cloud appeared not far away. Then, a woman even prettier than the clouds walked out. When the woman saw Xiaohua, a strange expression appeared on her face. She didn't even walk close to him and immediately said respectfully, "So it's Taoist Xiao. Junior Zhong Qiao greets Senior." Seeing that Zhong Qiao recognized him at a glance and flew over, Xiaohua was no longer surprised. Some people in this world were born to be chief stewards. Xiaohua's strength was outstanding, and he believed he had a photographic memory for cultivation techniques and other aspects. However, he never dared to place high hopes on himself when it came to judging people's faces. "Oh?" Xiaohua raised an eyebrow and raised a hand to lift Zhong Qiao up. He smiled and said, "I thought the chief steward was a man. I didn't expect you to be an outstanding woman. People often say that women are not inferior to men. Indeed, it's true." Zhong Qiao stood up and said with a smile, "Senior, you flatter me. I'm just an ordinary person. I do what I should do and get what I should get." "Well said." Xiaohua clapped his hands and said, "The matters of the world are so simple. However, many people don't understand." Zhong Qiao smiled and asked, "Senior, may I know why you've come to my Jai Xinglu?" Xiaohua was about to answer, but his heart skipped a beat and he asked again, I occasionally passed by Yuling Bay and heard that there was a Zhai Xinglu here. I wanted to see if Shu Qing was here. Haha, I'm here. Of course, Shu Qing isn't here, Zhong Qiao said with a smile. As for where Shu Qing is, I don't know either. In that case, I can only ask Miss about the matters of the Xingyue Palace? Xiaohua asked again. Senior, you're indeed here for the matters of the Xingyue Palace, Zhong Qiao said with a smile. It looks like the Xingyue Palace is fated to be with you. Oh? Xiaohua's eyes lit up and he asked curiously. Could it be that there's news about the Xingyue Palace? This is not the place to talk. Senior, please come with me. Zhong Qiao looked around. Although it was the same as before and there were no other cultivators or members of the sea race nearby, Zhong Qiao still felt worried and said, Xiaohua nodded. Zhong Qiao raised a hand and pointed, and a spiral staircase appeared beneath their feet. Under Zhong Qiao's lead, Xiaohua came to a loft. Xiaohua looked at the loft that was similar to the auction house in the past and said with a smile, This is the high platform of the auction house, right? -13. Chapter 3952. Senior, you're right! Zhong Qiao smiled. Since you're here, let's bid again. It's still early now, so I'll tell you about Xingyue Palace. All right. Xiaohua nodded. I remember Zhu Qing said that if I hear news about Xingyue Palace, I can find any Zhai Xinglu Xingyue can send me to Xingyue Palace. It's exactly as you said. Zhong Qiao smiled. Senior's name and image have been left in Xingyue. As long as you appear in Zhai Xinglu, we will definitely tell you about Xingyue Palace. Moreover, you defeated perfected Lord Qingyuan of the Immortal Palace and sowed seeds for justice, benefiting all living beings in the world. Now that your reputation is growing, as long as you appear in Zhai Xinglu, we will give you news about Xingyue Palace without any name or image. Haha, I'm ashamed. Xiaohua smiled. It's just an act of fishing for fame, but you all know about it. Hee hee. Zhong Qiao covered her mouth, her beautiful eyes rippling with an indescribable expression. If you're fishing for fame, there won't be any good deeds in the world. Zhai Xinglu also wants to do such a good deed, but with Zhai Xinglu's strength, we can't do it. This shows the importance of Senior's good deed. Moreover, when I saw Senior's good deed just now, I thought it was Senior's simple benevolence, but thinking carefully, there are too many things to ponder about. Seeing that Zhong Qiao did not talk about Xingyue Palace and instead changed the topic, Xiaohua asked, Why can't Zhai Xinglu do it? What did you see? If it's immortal herbs or demon fruits, Zhai Xinglu may be able to find them. But if it's so many seeds, where will Zhai Xinglu get them? There are many disasters in the hidden immortal mainland now, and only Su Province and Yu Province are safe. How can the people of these two provinces have extra food? Although there is food in the Western Paradise, the war between immortals and Buddhas is imminent. No one dares to take this risk. Moreover, how many primordial stones can this risk be worth? Zhong Qiao explained with a smile. After all, Xingyue isn't a piece of white paper. Xiaohua sighed. Once stained with the stench of money, even the white jade will be covered in dust. Zhong Qiao ignored Xiaohua's sigh and continued. Moreover, Senior has just offended the Immortal Palace. Now, taking advantage of the grain seed matter, you are wantonly gathering the people's support. If the Immortal Palace wants to suppress you again, I'm afraid they will be extremely scrupulous. Now that I think about it, I really admire your calculation. You can actually think of getting rid of the control of the Immortal Palace from the hearts of the people. This is something that I have never dreamed of. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. When he took out the grain seed, he never thought about it. If it had such an effect, it could only be an unintentional result. Also, Zhong Qiao continued, if Senior had been the only one spreading the news, the Confucian cultivators would have killed it long ago, and no one would have known. However, the Confucian cultivators led by the four great clans were not convinced by the Immortal Palace, so they used Senior's matter to humiliate the Immortal Palace. As a result, Senior's matter spread like wildfire, and more cultivators knew about it. There were even many clans that sent Senior's grain seeds to various places in 9 regions. Taoist Xiao has become the savior of many people in the hidden Immortal continent. As long as time passes, Taoist Xiao's name will certainly be known by all the people in the hidden Immortal continent. Also, Senior Xiao, if this junior's prediction is correct, it won't be long before Senior will be pardoned by the Immortal Palace, and even be rewarded by the Immortal Palace. Xiao Hua was somewhat stunned. He didn't expect that his seed planting in the God and Devil blood pool would be known by the world so quickly. Even more, he didn't expect that the speed of the Confucian cultivator clans was far beyond his imagination. How long had it been? They had already spread their grain seeds throughout 9 regions. In particular, he really envied Zhai Xinglu's source of information. This small chief manager of Zhai Xinglu actually knew so much. However, when he heard Zhong Qiao's words, he was somewhat puzzled and asked curiously, how is that possible? This old man is already surprised that the Immortal Palace didn't arrest me. How can there be a reward? Presumably Taoist Xiao knows that your Tao school has an old senior called the Grand Mist Ancestor, right? Of course I know. Xiao Hua somewhat understood. Since that old senior doesn't listen to the Immortal Palace and wants to go against the Immortal Palace, then the Immortal Palace naturally has to find someone who can go against that old senior. Zhong Qiao explained. And isn't Senior Xiao just the right person? Xiao Hua's mouth was bitter, but he still shook his head. Unfortunately, this old man's strength is too far from the Grand Mist Ancestors. It doesn't matter if your cultivation is lacking. The Immortal Palace has countless methods. Raising Senior's cultivation is just a matter of lifting a finger. Zhong Qiao smiled and said, But if you want to find someone with such a good reputation like Taoist Xiao, you won't be able to find one even in 100,000 years. This is the Immortal Palace's plan to sow discord. Presumably, the Grand Mist Ancestor can see through it with a glance, otherwise this old man will be in danger. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Taoist Xiao. Zhong Qiao smiled and said, If it's that simple, then it's good. In fact, Junior sometimes thinks about Senior's actions, although it's calculated very well. If there's no time, or if Senior's luck is bad, even if you pile up grain seeds all over the hidden Immortal continent, the Immortal Palace may not give face to the Confucian aristocratic families. Don't talk about rewards, perhaps they might even kill the chicken to scare the monkeys and warn the 4 aristocratic families. Senior, don't forget what you said in the Copper Pillar State. If the Immortal Palace wants to kill Senior, the 4 aristocratic families definitely won't dare to brazenly stop it. Oh? Where is this old man's luck good? Xiao Hua was somewhat at a loss as he was in the middle of the situation. Naturally, it's the war between immortals and Buddhas. Zhong Qiao replied. Xiao Hua scratched his head. Since it's a war between immortals and Buddhas, what does it have to do with this old man, a Taoist cultivator? The war between immortals and Buddhas naturally has nothing to do with Senior, but Senior has won the hearts of the people. Zhong Qiao's words hit Xiao Hua like a thunderbolt. Xiao Hua instantly understood. The Buddhist sects obtained believers in the hidden Immortal continent, and their power infiltrated the lower levels of the Confucian cultivators' rule through the common people. This was precisely what the Confucian cultivators feared, and at the same time, it was also their shortcoming. The war between immortals and Buddhas was also based on this fundamental reason. And the appearance of Xiao Hua broke the situation where the Buddhist sects were the dominant power among the common people. Xiao Hua's good deeds were exactly similar to the Buddhist sects, and even more direct. Although the common people who knew or respected Taoist Master Xiao couldn't be compared to the common people who worshipped Mahavairakana, but in the future, under the intentional push of the Immortal Palace, a Taoist master who fought against the faith of the Buddhist sects would definitely be formed. This kind of faith was a powerful aid for the Confucian cultivators in the war between immortals and Buddhas. As for the threat that Taoist Master Xiao posed to the Immortal Palace, the Immortal Palace simply didn't put it in their eyes. The Immortal Palace was afraid of the Buddhist sects, but they were simply not afraid of the weak Taoist Master Xiao. Ha! Thinking of this, Xiaohua laughed. Zhong Qiao also covered her mouth and said, Taoist master really understands. It seems that Junior doesn't need to say it clearly. That's right, you don't need to say it clearly. Xiaohua nodded. No matter how clearly this matter was explained, it was likely that no one would know the peculiarity within. No one would know that the Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva revered by the Buddhist sect and the Taoist Tao sect's Taoist Shao were the same person. Since ancient times, there had been many cases where the fishermen benefited from the fight between the snipe and the clam, but there had never been such a big fisherman like Xiaohua. Xiaohua actually wanted to know what kind of reward this snipe of the Immortal Palace would give him. Moreover, Xiaohua also clearly knew that the Immortal Palace would definitely give him a reward, not only because of the support of the four great families, but also because of his merit and virtue, allowing him to confront the faith of the Buddhist sections. If that's the case. Xiaohua thought again. Previously, this Xiao vaguely felt that there would be a disaster, but now it seems that this disaster has nothing to do with the Immortal Palace. Senior. Zhong Qiao of course didn't know what Xiaohua was planning in his heart, and said, These are all Junior's guesses. It's because Junior read the Book of Heroes and really admired the ingenuity of Senior's chess set, which is far more useful than the Demon God chess set. That's why Junior couldn't help but speak in front of Senior. If there's any disrespect, I hope Senior can forgive me. It's fine, Xiaohua said with a smile. This Xiao likes straightforward people the most. Since that's the case, Junior will tell Senior about the Star Moon Palace. Zhong Qiao paused and said, Actually, there's no clear news about the Star Moon Palace for the time being, but there are some strange phenomena. Judging from previous experience, I'm afraid that it will take at least 200 years for the outline to appear, so Junior can't tell Senior where the Star Moon Palace is, nor can I tell Senior the specific time. 200 years. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, That's not particularly long. The Star Moon Order says at least 200 years. There's no guarantee if it's more than that, maybe 2,000 years. Zhong Qiao said with a smile. Hearing this, Xiaohua suddenly raised his head, stared at Zhong Qiao, and asked word by word, What you said earlier? I'm afraid it's not your own thoughts, right? Zhong Qiao's face changed, and she hurriedly got up, bowed and said, Senior, please forgive me. Some of it is Junior's thoughts, and some of it is from the Star Moon Order passed down from Xingyun. It should be from all the managers of the star-picking towers. Senior, you don't have to worry. Other than these matters, there are also some related to the Confucian cultivators recorded in the Book of Heroes. For these human elites, Xingyun holds the greatest goodwill and cooperation, and can even provide some help. Xiaohua's expression was a little cold, and he took out a jade eye and handed it to Zhong Qiao, saying, This is something I need. Take a look, does Star Moon have it? Yes, Senior. Zhong Qiao did not dare to be negligent. She took the jade eye and looked at it, then said with a bitter smile, Senior, you're making things difficult for me. Wood and water elemental magnetism, water and fire elemental magnetism, fire and earth elemental magnetism, and metal elemental magnetism are all things of legend. Where can I find them? Not to mention Khanate Wood Mother and Khanate Earth Mother. I'm not asking you to find them. Xiaohua replied indifferently. Don't you have Star Moon behind you? Isn't Star Moon willing to help? Zhong Qiao did not know whether to laugh or cry, and said in a low voice, The things you want are too rare in this world, even for Star Moon. -13. Chapter 39:53. Forget it. Xiaohua waved his hand with a smile. You don't have to find it. Just give me the news. Yes, I will report this to Xingyue in a moment. Senior can inquire about it at any Zhai Xinglu in the future. Zhong Qiao felt that she had outsmarted herself. That's more like it, Xiaohua said as he reached out and took out a jade eye. What about the materials inside? So much? Zhong Qiao was dumbfounded when she saw the materials used to build the teleportation array and the thunderbolt in Xiaohua's jade eye. After a moment of surprise, she said with a smile, "We do have these materials, and many of them are being auctioned at today's auction. Senior wants so many materials, I dare not make the decision. If possible, Senior only needs to bid." "Humph, isn't that the same as not saying anything?" Xiaohua snorted coldly, scaring Zhong Qiao into cold sweat. Seeing Zhong Qiao's expression change, Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Forget it, I will bid later." "Yes, thank you, Senior. Senior is an honored guest of Jai Xinglu. Everything will be discounted," Zhong Qiao hurriedly said obediently. "Oh, that's right. Besides me, are there any recent deeds of those Confucian cultivators in the Book of Heroes?" Xiaohua asked. When Zhong Qiao heard this, her expression changed again. She hurriedly said, "Senior, please forgive me. I cannot speak of those things casually. After all, each person's secrets are hidden within. Can you at least tell me the names of those Confucian cultivators?" Xiaohua asked with a smile. But in Zhong Qiao's eyes, his smile was full of conspiracy. Zhong Qiao thought for a moment and said with a bitter smile, "Senior, did you come to Jai Xinglu because you obtained some information?" Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He stopped smiling and looked out the window. "What do you think? Alas, since Senior wants to find trouble with that person, actually, you can wait until that person leaves Jai Xinglu. After all, whether it's Senior or that person, they are both honored guests of Jai Xinglu and are protected by Jai Xinglu." Zhong Qiao sighed. "A few days ago, Long Jiang from Feather Spirit Palace forced his way to Jai Xinglu, but I did not reveal that person's whereabouts. If that person was Senior, I would still do the same. Therefore, I hope that Senior won't force me." Zhong Qiao's words made Xiaohua even more curious. There were quite a few Confucian cultivators who had enmity with him, but most of them were secrets. However, Xiaohua already knew how powerful Xingyu was. Perhaps they knew some secrets. Who was this person who deserved his bad luck? Duan Muqing? That's not right. With Duan Muqing's current cultivation, how could she be worthy of this old man's bad luck? It's Duanmu Liangxing. The first thing Xiaohua thought of was the Duanmu family and Duanmu Liangxing. Xiaohua even felt a little guilty, but he immediately shook his head. That's not right. This old man's grudge with Duanmu Liangxing is too secretive. Xingyue couldn't possibly know. Then, who is it? Suddenly, Xiaohua was startled. He seemed to have thought of something and almost jumped out of his chair. Since it was Star Picking Tower, then he should have thought of Bronze Pillar State. Since there was Bronze Pillar State, then he should have thought of Bronze Pillar Academy. Thinking of Bronze Pillar Academy, Xiaohua couldn't help but think of its dean and deputy. And since he thought of these two people, Xiaohua can already determine who the person who is worthy of his bad luck is. Other than Dou Shanjun, who had fought with him in front of Bronze Pillar Academy, and Dou Shanjun, who had revealed his extraordinary cultivation in the Black Wind Ridge Cave abode, who else was worthy of Xiaohua's bad luck? Who else could see Xingyu and the big hand behind the screen like Xiaohua? Xiaohua forcefully suppressed his surprise. He really didn't know what he was feeling now. Did he want to see Dou Shanjun, or did he want to quickly escape from this place? Facing Dou Shanjun, Xiaohua felt that he was a child without any strength to fight back. He really didn't like this feeling. This old man hasn't seen Professor Dou for many years and wanted to see if he was still as elegant as before. You don't have to be afraid. Since you don't want to say, this old man won't force you, Xiaohua said with a smile, while stealing glances at Zhong Qiao's expression. Sure enough, Zhong Qiao's face was obviously relaxed. She said with a smile, "Thank you, Senior, for your tolerance." However, before Zhong Qiao's voice fell, a very strange divine sense swept in from outside. The restriction inside the pavilion was completely invisible to this divine sense. When this divine sense swept over Xiaohua, it immediately caused a very slight tremble in the bottom of Xiaohua's heart. Damn it! Xiaohua immediately became alert. He was greatly alarmed. He didn't need to think at all. His first thought was, this Dou Shanjun, What cultivation level is he at? This Xiao had only just mentioned him, and he immediately sensed it. Since he knew that Dou Shanjun was in Jai Xing Lu, Xiao Hua's tone pretended to be respectful. He waved his hand and said, "We didn't get to know each other until we fought. Although he's a Confucian cultivator and I'm a Taoist, I've also practiced Confucian swordsmanship and have a certain relationship with Confucian cultivators. How can I find trouble with him as you think? This is probably what a hero cherishes another hero." Zhong Qiao covered her mouth and laughed again. She looked very indescribably beautiful. Although Dou Shanjun's cultivation level can't compare to Taoist Zhao's, he can also see the secret of the screen. In the future, if the two seniors enter Xingyue Palace hand in hand, it may be another beautiful story in the future. This? Xiao Hua was a little tongue-tied. Zhong Qiao's words were awkward no matter how he heard them, but he couldn't refute anything. Zhong Qiao had probably said everything she needed to say. She stood up and said, "The auction will begin in half an incense stick's worth of time. Junior won't nag Senior anymore. Junior wishes Senior a fruitful return today. I'll take advantage of your auspicious words." Xiao Hua nodded, not standing up. Zhong Qiao took her leave. Not long after, a beautiful woman came to deliver spirit fruits and other things. Xiao Hua asked, and this woman was indeed called Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi had just left with the spirit fruits and returned in a moment, holding a visiting card in her hand. She said with a nervous expression, "Senior Dou Shanjun of Bronze Pillar Academy wants to visit." "Oh? Is that so? Why aren't you inviting him in?" Xiao Hua was well aware, but he pretended to be surprised and stood up. Xiao Yi's expression relaxed, and she said with a smile, "Senior, please sit down. Dou Shanjun is here to visit. You're a senior, so there's no need to be so courteous. This old man and Dou Shanjun are old acquaintances. It's nothing to welcome him. Senior is really amiable and approachable," Xiao Yi said and left the pavilion. A moment later, Dou Shanjun walked in. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly went up to greet and was about to salute. Dou Shanjun waved his hand and waved his big sleeve. A cloud of rosy clouds came out from his sleeve and blended into the pavilion's surroundings in a moment. A layer of warm jade-like luster emerged from the four walls. Xiao Hua knew that Dou Shanjun had set up a restriction to prevent others from spying on the scenery here. He bowed and said, "Junior Xiao Hua greets Senior." However, just as he bowed and his gaze fell to the ground, he was suddenly shocked. He secretly frowned and said, "Even with Dou Shanjun's cultivation, he has to be so careful in Jai Xing Lu. Then, who is he guarding against? Get up." Dou Shanjun raised his hand to help Xiao Hua up and sat at the place where Xiao Hua was sitting before. He raised his head to look at Xiao Hua, who was standing respectfully in front of him, and said with a smile, "It's only been a few decades since we last met, but your name is actually so resounding that it far surpasses this old man's. Wherever you go, this old man still has to retreat 3 steps." Xiao Hua said in panic, "Senior is thinking too much. It's all because Senior is keeping a low profile and doesn't want others to know. Compared to Senior, this Junior is only the light of a firefly." No. Dou Shanjun picked up a spirit fruit and took a bite. He said with a smile, "This old man said that the things you did were really beyond this old man's expectations. This old man can't see through your thoughts anymore. If it's like what Zhong Qiao said, your schemes are really too deep. But if you didn't think so much, I'm afraid that even Thunder Monastery's Virokana would have to give up his seat for you." "Senior," Xiao Hua smiled bitterly, "don't you know what this junior is thinking? This junior just wants to cultivate in peace. Cultivating in peace is only a kind of ideal. This ideal is only a white lotus flower in your heart. In this world, no matter how profound your cultivation is, you're all like a piece of duckweed. You can only drift in an unpredictable situation without being able to control yourself. Perhaps if your cultivation is high, you'll have a trace of power to protect yourself. But any resistance will be strangled by everything in this world. Do Shanjun said with a sigh. Even if it's this old man, it's also the same. Do Shanjun's tone at this time was already different from when he was at Black Wind Ridge. Although he still didn't see Xiaohua as an equal cultivator, his tone already faintly contained extremely high praise. Yes, this junior understands. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to follow Do Shanjun's tone and asked further. He only said respectfully, "This junior obtained senior's cultivation method and secret technique and has always been practicing bitterly. I want to have the power to protect myself. The tree wants to be still, but the wind won't stop. Xiaohua, you're in the middle of the situation. Right now you're in the limelight. If you want to protect yourself, just relying on your cultivation isn't necessarily enough." Do Shanjun glanced at Xiaohua and said, "Zhong Qiao's words are quite reasonable. You should also think more about it." Hiss. Xiaohua was startled and said in a low voice, "Senior, when did you hear it? How come this junior didn't notice it? Humph, if I was discovered by you, what face would this old man have left?" Do Shanjun scolded, then looked at Xiaohua and said with some praise, "Your concealment technique is quite good. With this old man's ability, I can't see the whole thing. Remove the secret technique and let this old man see your cultivation." "Thank you, senior." Xiaohua's face showed ecstasy. Because Do Shanjun said this, it was clear that he wanted to give pointers to Xiaohua's cultivation. For an ordinary cultivator, this was a rare opportunity. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's heart was abnormally bitter. He didn't dare to let Do Shanjun, this old monster, touch his body. If Do Shanjun discovered the secret of his body, who knew what kind of fangs he would reveal? -13. Chapter 3954. However, since Do Shanjun had pointed it out, Xiaohua was also helpless. He could only brace himself and withdraw the secret technique, revealing the early stage of the spirit's severing stage. Fortunately, Do Shanjun didn't reach out his hand at all. Just like before, his two eyes gave birth to black and white lattices. On each black and white lattice, tiny runes appeared. The runes rushed out like ants, filling Do Shanjun's entire eyes. In these black and white eyes, Xiaohua's whole body was cold, as if he was seen clearly by Do Shanjun from the inside out. "Huh! It's a little strange," Do Shanjun exclaimed in surprise, just like when he examined the 5-brocade cloud painting. Then, he raised his hand and pressed his index finger and middle finger between his eyebrows. Pop! A strange silver rune exploded between Do Shanjun's eyebrows. In Do Shanjun's eyes, the black and white runes flashed with colorful brilliance, extremely dazzling. After a while, the brilliance in Do Shanjun's eyes gradually dissipated, revealing the previous black and white starry eyes. At this time, Do Shanjun's eyes showed obvious surprise. "Xiaohua, when did you start to practice the red nascent soul technique?" Do Shanjun stared at Xiaohua's eyes and asked word by word. "Why didn't this old man notice it last time? Red nascent soul technique?" Xiaohua was stunned and asked. "Junior doesn't know what red nascent soul technique is?" "Oh," Do Shanjun replied. "It's the common loose immortal technique in the cultivation world." "Ah? Senior!" Xiaohua's heart jumped, and he hurriedly took out the scattered nascent soul inkyutong from his arms and handed it to Do Shanjun and said, "Junior got this inkyutong by chance and saw that there was a secret technique to cultivate the nascent soul technique. You also know that Junior's spiritual power is relatively strong, and I don't have a useful technique. I saw that there were some unique techniques in this secret technique, so I tried to cultivate it." Do Shanjun took the inkyutong and looked at it. His face was relieved, but he didn't speak, but closed his eyes and thought about something. Xiaohua's heart tightened. He stared at Do Shanjun and didn't dare to speak. After a while, seeing Do Shanjun open his eyes, he carefully asked, "Senior, this technique, is there a great flaw? Where's the cultivation technique I gave you?" Do Shanjun did not directly answer Xiaohua's question, but instead asked, "Why don't you cultivate those upright cultivation methods?" Xiaohua replied with an extremely wrong tone. Senior, Junior naturally used the cultivation method that Senior gave me to cultivate. Humph, how can the Crimson Nascent technique be cultivated together with the Immortal? Nascent technique? Dou Shanjun sneered. An ordinary nascent soul cultivator only has 2 meridians. These meridians ultimately support the yin and yang of the spirit body. All cultivation methods rely on the body's meridians. Does your nascent soul have meridians all over your body? Can he cultivate Tao techniques? Junior. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment, and then said with a smile, I use Senior's cultivation method to cultivate my physical body, meridians, and nascent soul, with the help of this so-called Crimson Nascent arts trick. Sigh, you're really bold. Dou Shanjun sighed and said, Although the Crimson Infant technique is very powerful, in the end, without the protection of the physical body, it is difficult to achieve the great Tao. Such examples can be found everywhere. Thus, as long as ordinary cultivators had a physical body, they would not attempt this cultivation technique that had no end in sight. Your cultivation is still shallow, so quickly give it up. Yes, Junior understands. Xiaohua nodded. Now your realm seems to have reached the spirit severing stage, but in fact, you are still in the late nascent soul stage. In these decades, has there been no bottleneck from the nascent soul stage to the spirit severing stage? Dou Shanjun asked again. Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly replied. Yes, Senior, Junior has been wondering what's going on with me. Moreover, I can cultivate the spirit-severing cultivation method that Senior gave me. The reason is naturally this Crimson Infant technique, Dou Shanjun said. Your physical body and nascent soul have different cultivation paths. Of course, there will be a situation of chaos in your realm. Then how should I solve it? Xiaohua asked. Dou Shanjun shrugged his shoulders and said lightly, You can't live if you want to. This old man also doesn't know how to solve it. Xiaohua was shocked. Looking at the ink cloud pupil that was still in Dou Shanjun's hand, his eyes turned and asked, Senior, do you have the complete Crimson Infant technique? What? Do you want to go all the way? Dou Shanjun raised the ink cloud pupil in his hand and asked thoughtfully. Junior thinks that if you want to solve it properly, you must have a complete understanding of the Crimson Infant technique. The cultivation method that Junior got is incomplete, and it is the understanding of others. I am afraid that it is not as authentic as the cultivation method in Senior's hands. If Senior has it, can you give it to Junior to comprehend? Maybe I can find a way to deal with it. Xiaohua explained. Moreover, Junior wants to break through from the nascent soul stage, but I have not found a suitable medicinal pill. If Senior has a suitable medicinal pill, Junior can also solve it from another way. Your appetite is really not small. Dou Shanjun sneered. This old man has not promised to give you the Crimson Infant technique, and you still want the Breaking Darkness pill? Xiaohua said with a smile. Since Senior has already given me a helping hand, you might as well help Junior to the end. If Junior walks a unique path, I may be able to help Senior in the future. Dou Shanjun closed his eyes, and the ink cloud pupil in his hand turned over and over. After a while, Dou Shanjun's finger moved, and the ink cloud pupil turned into ashes. Xiaohua was delighted. Sure enough, another ink cloud pupil appeared in Dou Shanjun's hand. Dou Shanjun opened his eyes and looked at Xiaohua. He passed the ink cloud pupil to Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, this old man has high expectations for you. As long as I can help you, this old man will give it to you. However, you must not bite off more than you can chew, and do not be self-opinionated and arrogant like the Grand Mist Ancestor. As long as you cultivate step by step, and everything you did before was out of your heart, this old man can guarantee that you can cultivate to the Mahayana realm. Of course, whether you can ascend or not depends on your own luck. This old man cannot guarantee it. See. Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air. Dou Shanjun's words contained too much, and Xiaohua did not dare to think too much about it. This Scarlet Infant technique is complete. You can use it as a reference. Moreover, this old man did not add any restrictions. Dou Shanjun said and handed the ink cloud pupil to Xiaohua, Then, without waiting for Xiaohua to take it, he took out a qianquan bag from his sleeve and said, "This is the dark breaking pill, void bearing pill, lotus connecting pill, and green heaven pill. Since this old man wants to give it to you, this old man might as well give it to you. See." Xiaohua was stunned. He sucked in a breath of cold air again and looked at Dou Shanjun in disbelief. The dark breaking pill was a necessary pill to break through the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm and enter the spirit severing stage. The void bearing pill was used to break through to the void refining stage. The lotus connecting pill was used to break through to the unity stage. The green heaven pill was used to break through to the Mahayana realm. Although the hidden immortal continent and dawn rain continent were different, Xiaohua did not know whether the pills given by Dou Shanjun would be useful. However, based on these pills, Xiaohua was able to see that Dou Shanjun cared for him deeply. Xiaohua did not accept a Mo Yuntong and the qianquan bag like before. Instead, he tidied up his robe and bowed respectfully. "Junior Xiaohua thanks Senior for your kindness." What Xiaohua said was not excessive. Xiaohua had never had a real master since he started cultivating. No cultivator had ever guided Xiaohua in his cultivation for a long time. Dou Shanjun not only gave Xiaohua the cultivation method and divine sense secret technique after he separated his spirit, but now he also gave Xiaohua the red nascent soul technique and various pills and pill recipes. His importance in Xiaohua's cultivation was not inferior to the inheritance left by Tsenlongzi. How could Xiaohua not be grateful? However, to Xiaohua's surprise, Dou Shanjun waved his hand and stopped Xiaohua from bowing. He said lightly, "This old man doesn't intend to teach you anything. You don't have to say this in front of this old man. This old man just thinks that you are a promising talent. Now that the hidden immortal continent is declining, this old man can help as much as he can. Although Senior has such a simple idea, Senior doesn't dare to accept it so easily." Xiaohua shook his head and insisted, "Senior, please accept Junior's bow." Xiaohua didn't use his spiritual power, he just simply bowed. "There's no need for that." Dou Shanjun also insisted, "I think you also know that this old man is just making a deal with you. All of this is for this old man to get more in the future." "Yes, this Junior understands." Seeing this, Xiaohua had to get up and said, "Junior can promise Senior here that as long as it's not something that offends the heavens and reason, Junior can help Senior, ah?" Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Dou Shanjun interrupted him in astonishment. He even asked with a little dumbfounded, What did you say? As long as it's not something that offends the heavens and reason, you will help this old man?" Xiaohua nodded and said righteously, "Yes, this Junior is a principled cultivator of the Tao sect. This Junior can be selfish, can be greedy, can plot against others. But there is one thing that this Junior will never do, and that is not something that offends the heavens and reason. If Senior wants to make a deal with this Junior, then Senior should take back these things. Even if this Junior accepts them, he will never make a deal with Senior in the future. Looks like this old man's things from before are gone forever?" Dou Shanjun's face turned cold as he said in a low voice. Seeing that Dou Shanjun was angry, Xiaohua felt a little regretful in his heart. He felt that he shouldn't have accepted them just now and acted according to the circumstances in the future. But he thought for a moment. Dou Shanjun was so powerful, even if he cultivated for another 1,000 years, it would probably be difficult for him to be a match. Instead of making things difficult for him in the future, he might as well make a decision now. However, Xiaohua also understood in his heart that he was gambling right now, gambling that Dou Shanjun wasn't the kind of person he thought. Xiaohua gritted his teeth and nodded. This Junior has already cultivated the cultivation technique Senior bestowed. If Senior wants to take back Mo Yuntong and the other things, this Junior will give them to Senior right away. But Senior didn't say what you wanted this Junior to do that day, so this Junior can't be considered to have broken the contract. 13. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.